This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
You're wrong! If you're getting any compensation, it's not charity!
Russ Wakelin. You put me on a boat with frickin' dragons attacking me and whatnot? Now we're talking.
And Jasper Oorthuys in the third chair.
I love the smell of fluff in the morning.
With contributions from Total Fangirl
Vampires do not sparkle.
and our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming in at the speed of a fierce cavalry charge down a gentle slope into the flank of an unprepared levy. This edition is brought to you by Nothing Personal, a game of bribery and blackmail from Dice Tower Designs, powered by Game Salute. Pledge now at Kickstarter.com. I'm Geekly McNerdigan, your host. Today, as always, our panelists are Russ, Sir Jimmy Ware Wakelin, and historical wargaming magazine magnate Jasper Mike O'Claridge Oorthuys. Let's begin. Issue number 1. Inspiration, from the Latin inspirare, meaning to breathe into, refers to an unconscious burst of creativity in a literary, musical, or some other artistic endeavor. The Greeks believed that inspiration came from the Muses, as well as the gods Apollo and Dionysus. Similarly, in the ancient Norse religion, inspiration derives from the gods such as Odin. Inspiration is also a divine matter in many modern religions, including Christianity and Judaism. Question. On a scale of 1 through 10, with 1 being the third men's urinal stall from the left in Manchester, New Hampshire's Red Arrow bathroom, and 10 being the very breath of God descending upon you as you look out over the Grand Canyon at dawn on a clear day, how inspiring for a gamer is a visit to Bound Brook, New Jersey? Ben Rush Russ.
I'm going to go with 6.5.
Tom Jefferson Jasper.
-6.
Oh, come on, guys. It's got to be at least a 7. This is the old Queens Bridge where Washington deliberated attacking New Brunswick and then turned aside the entire Revolutionary War on a pivot point at crossroads that had seen both armies march across its ancient stones. I'm disappointed in both of you. Issue number 2. History is the discovery, collection, organization, and presentation of information about past events. History can also mean the period of time after writing was invented. Scholars who write about history are called historians, and it is a field of research which uses a narrative to examine and analyze the sequence of events, and it sometimes attempts to investigate objectively the patterns of cause and effect that determine events. Historians often debate the nature of history and its usefulness, which causes some headaches, I would imagine. Question. One of the most oft-quoted phrases relating to history is the quip attributed to Santa Anna of 10, often paraphrased as, those who do not learn from history are doomed to what? Jerry Weinberg Wakelin.
Repeat it.
Dick Ouvry Oorthuys.
Yeah, well, it would be repeated, but it's not really good history.
That's wrong! Clearly you're not familiar with the actual quote, which was mispresented all these years. So what he actually said was, those who do not learn from history are doomed to lose repeatedly at the historical war game table.
What?
Issue number 3. Magazines, periodicals, glossies, or serials are publications that are printed with ink on paper, generally published on a regular schedule, and contain a variety of content. They are generally financed by advertising, by a purchase price, by prepaid magazine subscriptions, or all three. At its root, the word magazine refers to a collection of store or storage location like bullets, which makes it particularly fitting for a war games magazine. In the case of written publication, of course, it is a collection of written articles. Question. Selling more than 45 million issues a month. What is the most popular magazine in the world? Davey Remnick Russ.
I have no idea. No clue.
E.J. Jacobs Jasper.
Must be something Chinese.
You'd think so, but no, it's Reader's Digest.
Oh, wow.
Reader's Digest, I'm afraid. A close second would be TV Guide, but then second place is just another way to say wrong. Issue number 4. Although we all like to play on pretty-looking wargaming tables, we must always remember that despite the nature of the initial inspiration, we should always remember that terrain has always been an extremely important element of the battle space fought through in every conflict. Strategists and students of military history have been scrutinizing battlefield terrain for as long as one group of people made the decision to run across a field and hit another group of people with sticks. Question. In his 1812 essay, Principles of War, considered by most as a precursor to his magnum opus On War, Prussian strategist Clausewitz outlines 2 distinct advantages to be garnered from terrain. What does he say is the most important advantage gained through terrain? Semanguru Russ.
Position.
Jangbogo Jasper.
Surprise.
Unfortunately, no. That makes both of you wrong. The two advantages were to hamper the enemy and to provide cover for one's troops. By far the more important of which, of course, is cover. Duh. That's it for now. Thanks for listening and good night.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by Lone Wolf Development. Take your game to the next level.
And by ArmorCast, your home for resin battlefield scenery and metal cinematic effects. ArmorCast.com.
And by Geek Nation Tours. Rise up and join the Geek Nation, touring the world at geeknationtours.com.
And the War Store, bringing the war to your door since 1999, and that is for a decade or more.
And by Audible. Try the service, get a free book, and support the show. All by visiting audibletrial.com/D6G. And by GameSalute.com. Check out gaming news or find out what the new hotness is on Springboard. GameSalute.com. Hello!
Hello!
Hi.
And welcome to episode 114 of the D6 Generation. I'm Russ Wakelin.
I'm Craig Gallant.
And I'm Jasper Oorthuys.
Hey, Jasper, welcome to the show. Very excited to have you here.
Thank you.
As many of you may know, Jasper is the head honcho behind many a great magazine, including one of my favorites, War Games, Soldiers, and Strategy, right?
Yep.
And you're kind of to join us here today, talk about all kinds of stuff. Since you have so much experience with historical type things, just seems to me we should talk about that a bit today. So we're going to talk about a little primer, as they say across the pond there, on historical stuff. And then we're also going to talk about where we go for historical inspiration. What's your name for that, Craig?
That would be Destination Inspiration, which is intriguing to me. I was reflecting on this today. When I used to come back from my trips, I would go, Russ, I want to do a segment on like inspirational locations, and Russ would go, no, that's not like a whole segment. We do that in achievements in gaming or something. And then Russ gets home from Hawaii, and guys, get us to make a really great segment. Oh,
right. See, that's how it works. I was inspired by my destinations.
Clearly. Your destination was full of inspiration, I have no doubt.
Indeed it was. So we have a few bits of business here we should take care of before we get to all that excitement. First of all, we have the ongoing Weird Miniatures prize pack contest. What's that consist of, Craig?
Basically what we're asking you to do is make a radio spot for Weird Miniatures, Malifaux, or any of their other games, and you be very creative. We're looking for a 30-second spot. And the winner will get just an incredible slew of Weird Miniatures stuff.
Yeah, we're going to wrap this baby up by the middle of November. So let's just say, I don't know, pick a number out of my hat. November 14th. Let's do that. So
the 14th. I like it.
11/14. Get all of your entries in. What you want to do is send those to contest@the d6generation.com and send in your audio sound bites. Do them recorded. Make them cool. Do them in character. Do them in just whatever you want to do to promote Malifaux. We got a great prize pack here. A lot of the new plastics, new Malifaux plastics. We got new Puppet Wars plastics. We got the new colored bases, all kinds of crazy stuff to give away. And it's all to the best entry. So think of some witty ones and send them in. Let's see what else we got going here. Also, we just had a Lost Chapter recorded. And Jasper, you were kind enough to come on and join us. And we talked about, do you remember what we talked about, Jasper?
Yeah. We talked about how Craig doesn't like pumpkin stuff.
Oh, I don't. And
the sad fate of magazines that don't get sold in stores. So you should all buy them, especially War Games, Soldiers, and Strategy.
Exactly what happened. We talked about magazine publishing and what it's like to be in the industry. And yeah, pumpkins and unsold magazines may have come up. Indeed.
And pumpkin stuff.
Right. And pumpkin stuff. Right. So if you're interested in getting the Lost Chapters, the thing to do is what, Craig?
If you're interested in getting the Lost Chapters, what you want to do is go to our website and click on the little stack of books over in the right-hand corner, and that'll bring you right to how to get our Lost Chapters episodes. Or you can get the new free app. Right. Either in where do you get it if you're an Apple user? I know you need to go to the Amazon store?
For Android users it's Amazon, and for Apple users it's of course iTunes. That's what we
iTunes, yes indeed.
So great. So if you want to check that out, go right ahead. And Craig, what are you guys doing? Are you doing any? Just had Extra Life end. So how did that go?
We did. Extra Life was awesome. It was crazy. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute as far as specifics go. My school just started a new thing today, which I thought I might as well leverage you guys. If you're interested, there's no pressure or anything like that, but they're deciding to do a thing called No Shave November, where you had to get your picture taken today with smooth shave, which is how I always am, unless I'm going with that rough and rugged look. But usually I'm always smooth shaven,
or something.
Unless it's been like I think summer a couple years ago, I didn't shave so that I could get all mean looking for the Spartan race. But that was just a little goatee. This has to actually be a full facial beard, which I haven't had since I required facial hair for roles that I had when I was in theater. And hey, buddy, my little buddy just walked in here. He's looking at me very confused as I talk to myself. So anyway, so I'm going to end up growing a full beard over the next 30 days.
Nice.
And it's for charity. So what I'm going to offer you guys is, if anybody here wants to, there's no big fancy computer stuff or anything. If you would like to donate, and this is like, we're talking like $5 or $10. We're not talking like hundreds of dollars or anything like that. But I will, at the very least, email you a picture of me with my full beard. If you want to send me a self-addressed stamped envelope, I will send you a signed picture of me with a full beard at the end of all this for a donation. So you can either contact me and I'll give you my PayPal info if you want to go through PayPal, or you can mail it to me and I will, especially if you give me a little self-addressed stamped envelope, I'll send you a picture of me with my full beard at the end of this, because it does get pretty impressive. I, unlike some Wakelands I can mention, can grow a full beard.
Wow. You're giving away signed pictures now? Is this like Granger's gone?
I'm just
so
offering what the people are asking for. That's not true. Nobody's ever asked me for a signed picture.
To send them, clips of your beard hair when
there you go. There you go. I will also send you beard hair if you really want. That's creepy. We'll get some voodoo person to do it, and the next thing you know, I'll be dancing to somebody else's tune.
You need to get one of those people there to authenticate it's your actual beard hair and not some other body hair of any kind.
Yeah, that's true. But anyway, so for my charity, you have to choose a charity to go to for this, and I have chosen the Wounded Warriors Project for the United States. So if you'd like to donate to a very worthy cause and get a picture of me, or if you donate so that I don't send you a picture. How's that? There's that too. And I may or may not include the clippings of my beard because it will be coming off right at the end of November.
Thank God.
But anyway, that's what's going on with me right now.
Yeah, I think we have to move on. So, Craig, what's the time now for?
Oh, it's time now for achievements in gaming.
Did you miss a dial there or something? What happened there?
I turned every dial, but I don't. Apparently they're not on the right things.
That's okay.
All right.
So
achievements in gaming.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And Achievements in Gaming is brought to us by Ruse, Victorian Steampunk Murder Mystery, powered by Game Salute. Check out all the awesome reviews and pledge today at Kickstarter.com. All right, so let's see. What have you been playing lately? Jasper, why don't you go first? What have you been playing recently?
Not that much, to be very honest with you. I'll hope to be playing a lot Saturday because we'll be going to a war game show in Antwerp.
Ooh.
Going abroad. Mostly I've been playing Muskets and Tomahawks, which is a really cool sort of skirmish-size historical war game set in either the French and Indian War or the American Revolution.
Right.
And the cool thing about it is it's very narrative. It's a game where they have a scenario generator, and depending on the kind of force you have, you can get different missions. If you're militia, then you probably have to defend a village, or if you're Indians, you're more likely to get a raid-like mission or reconnaissance scouting mission, and both sides can get different missions. So we've had it that we both had to scout, and you basically just have to go across all areas of the board and go back to your own side. And if you both have to do that, you may have to run into each other at some point, or you may just try to be the fastest one at it.
Nice. And is that skirmish game? Like, what's the model count in a game like that?
Yeah. The smallest point size in the book is 200 points, and depends a little bit on what kind of troops you have. If you have the best ones in the book are Hessian Jaeger. They're 14 points each. So with 15 guys, you'd have your whole force. With Indians, you'd need a lot more, but 15, 20, 30 guys. You can go up to 600 points, and you can have artillery and everything. And cool. It has a very nice turn system too. It uses cards for every kind of force you have. So you have regulars have 3 or 4 cards in the deck, and every card they can do one action. Your regulars, your British regulars, they have 2 cards in the deck, but they can do 2 actions every turn.
Oh, okay.
Militia have 1 card with 1 action and 1 with 2 actions. So they all come up every turn.
Right.
But you get this thing where you go, will I be the one to go first and get all the actions? Can I attack that unit and get back into the woods or not?
Right. That's neat. It sounds very, very
That
edgy.
sounds awesome.
Yeah, it does sound cool.
It's a very cool way to do the initiative, not just the cards, but the multiple cards. That's a really cool thing.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, like Indians that are in the woods and are shooting out, at somebody who's not in the woods, can be extremely hard to get out. But if you can catch them while they're just crossing from one set of woods into another one, they're very fragile. There's a morale system that's different for every kind of troops as well.
Oh, interesting.
And
sounds really interesting. It sounds like a lot of neat, very faction-specific rules. That's cool.
Neat systems in it.
Neat.
That is cool.
We'll get an achievement for that. That sounds really cool. Oops, that's the wrong button. That is not the crickets.
That is uncalled for.
There we
Russell.
go. All right, sorry, my bad. No, it's
What
good.
kind of a host are you?
That's wrong button, honestly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Craig, what have you been playing lately?
I did the big Extra Life, so why don't we go to you first, and I'll wrap up this segment.
All right. Well, I haven't played that much because I was on vacation most of this time, but I did a few things.
Yeah, your list looks pretty damn big for a guy who didn't do much.
No, I'll explain. So, first of all, I played Alien Frontiers the week before I left with our friend Adam, and he's a big Alien Frontiers guy. He has the new Factions expansion. He has actually all the Alien Frontiers expansion, so all the bling, all the new little plastic bits. So the colonies are no longer look like M&Ms. They now look like little plastic domed colonies and those little rocket ships. And it was fun. And I played with extra player, played with some of the new faction rules. Each player's got different specific rules now. That's a great game still. Loving Alien Frontiers. I'll take an achievement for that. Played a couple games of Mage Wars. Still really digging Mage Wars. I got Craig. We got to play some more of that. It's a fun game.
Yeah.
I had to actually purchased a couple extra little books to organize my cards so I can get. And I also bought they sent us a review copy, but I've also already bought an expansion deck of the cards, and I'll probably end up buying the core game. So I'm going to give the review copy away in a contest coming soon. But yeah, I really digging Mage Wars. Very, very nice. And also played with my girls. Played a little Super Dungeon Explorer before we went off on our little trip, and they still love that game a lot. And as I mentioned before, in the modeling section, my youngest is painting her Super Dungeon Explorer heroes. She's really digging that game. Just a fun, quick game. It's a great family game with the kids, the dungeon crawler.
Oh, cool.
Now, for my trip to Hawaii, which we'll talk more about later, but basically, as those who know their geography know, that New England is quite a bit of way away from Hawaii. In fact, I was trying to figure this all out, and it's actually pretty far. It's a lot closer for us to fly to like England than it would be to fly to Hawaii. And for
absolutely.
Hawaii is almost over halfway to Japan when you think about it, which is pretty crazy. So basically, net, I'm on the plane from flying directly from New York to Honolulu. So it's 10 hours one way and 9.5 hours back. Plus there's a little hop from New York to Boston. Plus it was a day flying around between islands. So basically 20 plus hours on planes, basically is what happened here. So all the time on a plane, it's very boring. Your kids are bored. Everything's going boring. So I had to break out the little video games here. And I broke out a couple that were board games. So first of all, Ticket to Ride on iOS. We played the heck out of that. Kids love that game. It's a great way to play the board game. Just pass and play. Makes time go quickly. Also, another game I discovered, I think I've talked before on the show about Epic Night, but I found this new game called Tiny Heroes by the same company that makes Epic Night. And Tiny Heroes is basically Dungeon Lords meets a tower defense game. So the theme here is you are an evil overlord building your dungeon, keeping those pesky heroes out, just like Dungeon Lords. But it's tower defense because the heroes sort of come in in sort of a random pattern, and they keep constantly coming. There's a little bit of real time element here. And you're adding traps to your dungeon, and eventually as you level up, you'll get monsters and put orcs in there and Medusas that shoot their arrows and the whole bit. And what really reminds me of Dungeon Lords, there are different kinds of heroes. So you'll be going along, and it's just a bunch of warriors, and that's fine. All of a sudden, and they got all these spike pits, and they always stop the warriors. But all of a sudden, thieves start sneaking in. They start disarming your traps. You're like, oh, man, that stupid thief. So you got to get the thief. But then wizards start coming in, taking out your mana. It's just really fun. So it's a great little game. Also can while away many an hour on the plane with that one. Play a little Mech Warrior. I think I talked about that before. Mech Warrior, of course, is Battletech on your iPad. Can't really go wrong with that title. Also another fun one, this is sort of old school, Broken Sword. It's an old point-and-click adventure game, kind of like the old Sierra Online games. Broken Sword is sort of a mystery, takes place in Paris, modern Paris, trying to solve this murder mystery thing. Great little distraction. The kids loved it. It kept them busy for at least a couple hours there on the plane. This is one of my favorite new finds. It's a game called Rebuild. So the premise here is you are in a zombie apocalypse has occurred, because it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when, really. So the zombie apocalypse has occurred.
That's what the federal government's saying now.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. So the zombie apocalypse is going to happen, and this game is sort of like Sim City meets a zombie apocalypse, because basically the city you live in has been overrun by zombies. You have one little base camp, and you're trying to expand out your base camp, and it's turn by turn, sort of turn-based game where you sort of decide which members of your little survivalists are going to do certain things. Like one of them might start rebuilding the hospital. Another one might go take out some zombies, clear zombies out of the mall. Another one might go scavenge for food. And you got to leave some back to kind of prevent a zombie attack next turn. And there's just it's very tactical. It's not really a combat game. It's more of a higher level strategic, how do we expand our city game. A lot of fun. Rebuild on iOS. And then the final two games I played, Hunters 2 on iOS is fun. This has been a little while, but it's kind of like it's kind of like XCOM in that it's a squad-based tactical game, sci-fi, pretty cool. And the other one I like, this is just total nostalgia, He-Man, the Masters of the Universe came out for iPad.
He-Man!
Exactly! And the only reason it's great is the gameplay is
by the power of Grayskull!
Right. It's got all the sounds in it. So it doesn't really matter that the gameplay is meh, all the sounds. I had to let earbuds in there. I'm like giggling away. People looking at me on the plane like, what is this guy doing over there? I'm like, it's He-Man! I'm just Skeletor, look at this. So anyway, it was that was my fun on the plane.
Does
there.
it have She-Ra? That's the question.
I have not seen She-Ra yet. And also, it's missing Battle Cat, which is really a disappointment. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, yep. So anyway, that was my my little plane flight distractions there.
Well, that's cool.
So, Craig, what have you been doing with... How did Extra Life go? Now tell us the details.
Well, Extra Life was awesome. Actually, I just got an email right now while you were talking from Boston's Children's Hospital Extra Life group. Yeah. And I was in the top 5.
Yay! Go, Craig!
Extra Life for Boston Children's Hospital, which is awesome. I didn't come close to the top because the guy who came to the top for Boston's Children's Hospital got in the top, was in the top spot for all of America.
Oh, nice!
Raised over $19,000.
Oh, that's awesome! Wow. That's awesome.
That is awesome. They raised almost $100,000 just for Boston's Children's Hospital alone.
Nice.
So it was an extremely beneficial event. It was a lot of fun. Went to Myriad Games, of course. Myriad Games, your friendly professional gaming store.
Yes, indeed.
So many games, so little time.
And they're a great supporter of Extra Life. They run the whole thing 24 hours there. You get in there and play your games.
And actually, thanks to Dan, and this we should mention probably later for Game Salute. Actually, you know what? We'll mention it later for Game Salute. But yeah, Dan is a big proponent of Extra Life and turning it into something more than video games. Now, globally, it has become more accepted as a gaming of all types. So it was really, really cool to be sort of at ground zero for that. As far as games go, that Tuesday, which doesn't count, I played another Firestorm Invasion Planetfall game. Tweeted a couple pictures of that over the course of the evening.
Look at you tweeting.
I know, I'm tweeting pictures. That's what I always wanted to do. I tweet pictures. That's what I do.
There you go.
Had a good time with that. And Spartacus came out sort of like as a precursor because Spartacus was a big go-to game on the day of Extra Life. Mm-hmm. So played Firestorm Invasion Planetfall, played Spartacus, and then I've been wanting to do this since I got back from Gen Con. I finally got Karen to play Timeline with me.
What'd you think?
And I was right. She loved it. We played it 6 times in a row.
Well, that's pretty quick. That's like 15 minutes.
Very quick game. It's a nice filler game. Yep. So it was 15 minutes. So that's like an hour and a half of play time. She liked it a lot, except that after 6 times in a row, we tried to play it a 7th time, and she was like, I know all these. I don't want to play anymore. so there's that question that everybody was like, what's the replayability? And I said, oh, my memory sucks. So it's the replayability is infinite. Well, not for my wife.
Apparently the
replayability is 7.
There you go.
On Extra Life itself, however, I started with a game of Malifaux against Greg, our local, what do they call them? What are their special guys?
Oh, yes.
I'm
totally blank now.
Their guys, their crew guys, their, I don't know, chain gang. No, officially sanctioned like demo runners and stuff like that. And Greg is awesome. He knows the rules backwards and forwards. I did recommend to him after my game, however, that he remove his red Joker. The game I played with him, I saw my black Joker 4 times in a 5-turn game. He saw his red Joker 4 times without seeing his black Joker once. Wow. And one time the red Joker popped up for him was on a damage soak flip, where I was about to kill his boss.
Right, master.
And I was like, oh, sacrifice my really big killer guy to run in there and kill his leader. And I did it. He flips. Oh, it's the red Joker. He soaks all the damage. Oh, great. So that was not so much fun. But the game itself, of course, was a blast. And then there was then we went to lunch, and at lunch, because I'm a big proponent of if you're doing Extra Life, you got to be playing the whole time. Right. So we played Zombie Dice at lunch.
Nice.
And we played Timelines again at lunch.
Nice.
And again, I proved that my memory sucks, so I can't win the game even when I played it 20 or 30 times.
Nice.
Then there was we played Spartacus for the first time. And that was a good time. Then we played Hex XL, which was awesome. Timelines Inventions again was a good time. Lords of Waterdeep came out. Of course, that was a blast. Spartacus came out again. That was a good time.
Nice.
Evil Baby Orphanage, of course, had to come out at some point or another. So that came out. Pitch Car came out. No, I'm not a big fan.
They don't like Pitch Car?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Pitch Car. No, I think it took Jeremy longer to set up Pitch Car than it took 6 of us to play it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's more of a game of civil engineering. So that's what I think that is. It's like a puzzle civil engineering game. And then, you can flick these cars around for a while if you want. Probably because I wasn't so good at it. It might fall into the heading of basketball, that same category basketball's in. Stuff that now, the game of the night for me was a game that our friend Tahoe came from Germany, and he's living nearby now. He was there for the whole day, and he brought this game out that was awesome, and it was called Perudo.
Perudo.
Which is a Peru dice rolling game where you're bidding. You're basically bidding a game. It literally would take me 5 minutes to explain the game, and probably an hour and a half to do it. Try to explain the math to you behind the game. I still wouldn't be able to do it. It's a dice, and you roll the dice, and then you start guessing how many of one face of dice is around the whole table. It was awesome. It's loud because everybody's got dice cups, so you're all like. And so, I mean, it's really, really a rowdy game. So when you're playing in an environment, if people are trying to be quiet, probably not the best idea. Really, really had a lot of fun with that. Played that 3 times, which is awesome. And it it was in fact, Matt, our friend Matt, bought it that day.
Yeah.
And bought it on Amazon because it's not available like anywhere normal. Like it's one of the very, very few games I've ever found Myriad couldn't get. We tried to order it at Myriad. They were like, sorry, we don't have access to that game. So I was like, oh crap. So he ordered it on Amazon. I ordered it the next day because I was like, I can't live without Perudo. And it was very, very funny having Tahoe like teach us, because with his accent, I couldn't really understand some of the terms are in Spanish. Some of them I'm very sure are made up words. And this is the Pacific round. I was like, I don't know what Pacifico means, but okay. Or was he saying Palifico or Perifico? I don't know. And so the ones are wilds in this game. And in my set, I got a set that I'm not really super happy about. The set he had was awesome, and the dice had these little toucans on the instead of a 1, and he was calling them Pacos. Yeah. So we're like, Paco! Paco! So people are yelling Paco every time they slam their dice cups down. Going through the rule book, the term Paco never shows up. So I don't know where that came from, but I really had a really good time with that. And then another game that Tahoe brought out, which is hilarious, and I wish I had written the German down, because the title in German is way better than the title in English. The title in English is Abandoned Ship. Yeah. But in German, it's like Aufwändig or something like that.
Okay.
And it's basically there are 7 mice, nice little plastic mice or wooded mice, and they're all of a different color. And basically, you are randomly assigned 3 in secret, and you are going to earn points if those 3 escape to the top before the Titanic sinks.
Oh, nice. So it's rats leaving a sinking ship.
Exactly. So the Titanic is sinking, and the board is this very dynamic board that actually is sinking. So it's like 3-dimensional slightly, and the mice are you roll dice and you randomly try to bring your mice up, but the mice die. The first mouse that gets to the top is killed by something, and so you want to have the second guy, and the whole time the boat is sinking, so it's killing the mice that aren't making it up ahead of time. Literally, the whole game took 15 minutes, and it was an absolute blast.
Should have been called Mouse Rouse.
It could have been or Mouse. I don't even get it.
Rouse is the German word for get out.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Mouse Rouse.
Oh, very nice. Oh, yes, a multilingual
There you
joke.
go.
Well done. And then I ended my night. I kind of set up ahead of time because I had to work on Sunday, so I was booking hours playing games. But this is another one of those situations where we had statewide testing. So I have a class of 13 advanced students. I lost 7 of them. So I was left with 6. So I was like, oh, gee, what are we going to do? Oh, let's play Evil Baby Orphanage. Because I'm literally not allowed to do anything that will advance the course syllabus. So I'm like, well,
careful. You might teach them some history or something with that one.
I know. So I thought, well, then I figured, why not Spartacus? So I took out all the cards that they had taken out for the demos at Gen Con.
Because of all the, yes.
So it wouldn't get
the naughty bits.
The naughty bits were removed, and I literally put tape over all the naughty bits on the box. So nobody could. And then, of course, I missed it because half the little tiny quotes have a couple of
naughty bits
here or there. But these are all grown-up kids. They're all seniors for the most part. And they played Spartacus. And just like last year when I played Dreadfleet with them, they're like, oh my god, I never even knew this kind of game existed. What are we doing? Where do I get it? And I was like, oh, you guys are great. You're gonna go out now and play some more games. And I learned the hard way, which I should have known ahead of time, that teenage girls are the most brutal playing this kind of game.
Yeah, I figured.
So they're brutal. So so that was a lot. And then my last game of the night was Alex of the Nerd Herders podcast had gone out, and somewhere online he had found rules for X-Wing for a mission that called for the large toy that I believe Kenner made back in the 90s, the blockade runner, the Rebel blockade runner.
Right.
Cool.
He bought one on eBay for I don't know, more than he probably should have spent. And we played. This was one I tweeted several pictures of because it's awesome. The blockade runner has its own rules, and basically the Empire is trying to take out the blockade runner before it can go into light speed, and the Empire, their TIE fighters come back as rookies, which stinks because you start with a whole bunch of really good guys and two advanced TIEs, and you're fighting against 3 really high ranking X-wings and a Y-wing, and the blockade runner has its own rules for shooting and getting target locks and stuff. It has 10 shields and 10 hull points.
Wow.
So it was rough, and it was right at night. I was giddy, and it was awesome. We played on the board Matt made with he was learning dry brushing techniques, so that was awesome. It was just we had an absolute blast,
nice.
And we blew it up. But then we found out that he was supposed to be playing on a slightly larger board. Oops. So we shouldn't have been able to jump in there quite so fast. So it was a really, really good time. Really neat way to end the whole thing. It was
nice.
Great. And then this week, I played Timeline again a couple times. That was when Karen finally decided she didn't want to play anymore. And Spartacus again on Tuesday.
Wow.
So Spartacus was like 5 times in the last 2 weeks, and that game just doesn't get any Yeah, I don't get tired of that game. It's
Nice.
just a blast. And Perudo, again, only this time we had to fake it because the only one we had was Liar's Dice, which is kind of like a drab sort of black and white version without all the Peruvian extras. But we were calling Pacos. And again, I don't know where that term came from, but it's fun to say. And we had a blast with that. And then I played Werewolf with one of my classes kind of to reward them for a lot of the work that they've been doing on the set. So I have had a very busy few weeks since last we spoke.
Nice. Wow.
Yes.
Go Craig.
A lot of games. A lot of
That's
games.
a lot of gaming, dude. That is. You're good for a month now. That is awesome.
Hey, that is the most games I played in a 24-hour period, according to Board Game Geek, who I am now rating all of our.
See, there you go. You're tracking it all. See,
I'm tracking.
You
I've
mocked
been
me for that
tracking
one.
for the whole year. I just didn't
See,
say
isn't it fun?
Yeah.
Isn't it fun? I told
It
you.
is fun. It's a the gamization of pretty much anything makes me do it.
Right.
That was what I learned.
All right,
Yeah.
so let's see. Well, that's amazing gaming there. So let's talk about modeling. Jasper, have you been, as the guy who does a bunch of magazines and featuring lots of models, I would expect you do some of that bit.
Yeah, we do. We do. Mostly because it's sometimes hard to get good photography for all the articles. People come up with the most ridiculous ideas, and then we're supposed to find pictures. But for that show this weekend, we're going to do a demo game of Black Powder.
Ooh.
And mostly I've been working real hard to try and get some bases with British Grenadiers for our American Revolution game done.
Oh, nice.
And they're really nice figures, but man, they're so complicated. They have lace and straps for this and straps for that, and a bearskin hat with a plate on the front and
They sound awesome.
everything. And I just can't. I can't not paint that. I have to do it, and because I guess I'm OCD that way, so it takes a lot of time. But I was actually painting pretty much up until you called me.
Wow. So how many guys have you painted now for this?
That's all of 18 because I'm a super fast painter.
18's a lot though. That level of detail. That's a lot of guys. And are these? What scale are these at? Somebody knows.
28 mil.
28 mil. Okay, great. Very cool.
So yeah, you can. That's the other thing. If there were 6 mil, you couldn't paint all that detail.
Right.
You just had to skip it. But no, 28 is just enough so you can see everything.
Go crazy. That's awesome.
So it has to be there.
Fantastic. What's your favorite miniature in that line?
What do you mean? The brand or?
No, I just mean of those guys you've been painting. Who's your favorite guy or pose or whatever? Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, they're British Grenadiers. They're all sort of marching in step.
You
They're not that exciting.
All right.
That's what I'm getting. That's what I'm getting.
Regiments are there's not very much. Well, there's usually variation between guy loading his musket, guy shooting his musket, guy marching with musket, guy charging with musket.
That's great. Well, muskets are very hot right now, so that's good. That's good stuff.
Seriously, the nerd rage about Revolution
It's not
has
nerd
got
rage.
to end.
That's not nerd rage. It's just good humor because it's a bad show. It's fun to pick on him.
Whatever.
All right.
Whatever.
So-
I'm not going to defend myself. I feel no need
You don't need to.
from you or from our listeners. I'm fine.
Comment for me. It's not on TV here yet or at all. I don't
Well,
know.
you should be thankful. You're doing fine.
Well, we'll just have to wait till some TV show buyer wants the latest James Bond to show on TV, and then they have to buy the whole package with all kinds of series they can't sell any other way, and then you get
There you go. That's how
So the cable franchise model is alive and well in Europe.
it is.
I think so. I think that's still how it works. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Package a bunch of crap nobody wants and force them to buy that for the few things that they do. Yeah.
Right. I love it.
Hey,
That's brilliant. Let's see. Well, I've only done a little, as I said, I was on vacation, but I did squeeze in a little more work on Infinity. I forgot to mention I did play one more Infinity game before I left. Still really digging Infinity, and I went out. I don't know if I mentioned this last episode. I actually bought the rule book, so I have that now. And I've been painting my little dudes using the painting technique that Eric Johns mentioned a couple Lost Chapters ago. And I am the second guy. The first guy I did with the technique, I could see where I was going, but I wasn't really happy. Second guy I'm feeling a lot better with, so I can't wait to get to my third. Definitely slower than my normal technique, but I'm really liking how it's looking. And since Infinity is a very small model count skirmish game, that's perfect time to play around with it. So I'm really digging the models. I'm digging the system. I really like Infinity, so I'm having fun with it.
Cool. Nice. And I would agree that your use of Eric John's technique is getting better and better.
Oh, good. I'm glad it's showing.
It is indeed showing.
Good. What about you, Craig? What have you been working on?
I have I finished my Firestorm Invasion 10 mil guys in their desert camo scheme, so that was fun. And that was a while ago though. And since then, I've been super ridiculously busy with writing stuff. I was able to work on a few more buildings and a couple other pieces of terrain for Dust/Dystopian Legions that I've already put in my order at the War Store for. So hoping they eventually can ship those through the devastation of Sandy to me when they had the War Store weekend and Sandy. So it was like, boom, boom.
Right? Ouch.
So looking forward to that, but I really liking the way all of this kind of I've gone with a sort of a industrial steampunky World War II-y kind of look, so that it'll cross a couple different genres that I think are going to be cool coming up.
Nice.
So that's what I've been doing.
All right, cool. So what about our last section here? What about other? So Jasper, what have you been? Any books, movies, or the geeky stuff you've been checking out lately?
I always read like 5 books at once, but they're mostly just, I'm a horrible history geek, so I read lots of history books at once.
Oh, that's very impressive.
I don't, it's not really geeky, I suppose, but I'm going to have some extra time. It's basically a part-time sabbatical to finish my PhD thesis.
Oh, wow.
Which is sort of, it's not really geeky, but it's kind of cool because,
That's
for me,
cool.
it's kind of geeking out.
That's geeky.
On my favorite topic.
Well, what's it about?
It's about the Roman Imperial Navy.
Oh, that's totally geeking
see,
out.
that
Come
is
on.
awesome and geeky for gaming.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
My master's thesis was on the history of theater. See, that's not geeky at all. That's just kind of lame.
Yeah, I know. It's a pretty cool topic. I don't know if I'll still like it after I'm done with it.
Yeah, that my experience. You spend that much time with something, and you got to really love it to still hold on after the end.
Yeah, it's a bit of a grind to get it done, but yeah, hopefully in a couple months that'll be done, and then I could look forward to the defense at some point.
Yes, those are fun.
What's been the most unexpected, cool little tidbit you discovered about the Roman Imperial Navy?
Well, everybody always. It's not really cool, but most people think that's one thing I always try to dispel. The myth that the Roman Imperial Navy spent a lot of time using slave-crewed ships to chase down pirates, and that's all not true.
Oh, really?
It's not very cool, I guess, but it's I just can't get over Ben-Hur.
They ruined it for everyone.
Oh yeah, yeah, they did. Well, the problem was, at the time the original book was written, this was still what they thought, but
right.
That's 140 years ago. So,
right. So, which part's not true? The slave crews or the chasing down pirates?
Neither.
Okay.
No slaves, no pirates. Right. Next.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much it. Yeah. So, and then that's got to be 200 pages of the other next thing. Yeah.
Very cool. That's an achievement for writing a thesis. That's pretty impressive. What else have you been up to?
I've been spending too much time on Europa Universalis.
Ooh, what's that?
Pretty old game. I played it a couple of years ago, and for some reason, I didn't even have it on my computer anymore. But a couple of weeks ago, I just was like, that was actually kind of fun, and just thought back about it, and was like, is it in the App Store? And it's in the App Store for Mac, and I was like, oh, that's And then a lot of time was gone.
Now, what is this game? What's the theme of this thing? It must be a historical war game, I'm guessing.
I guess it's even more political. It's a lot of it gets boring, but you're basically trying to develop your country from like the Middle Ages to just after the Napoleonic Wars.
Oh, cool.
You're trying to colonize the world. It's extremely diverse. I mean, you have to colonize the world. You have to develop your technologies. You have to try and I always play like as Holland because it's fun, because I have to.
Well, you got to make a world
but
power.
then you have to try and keep France off your back, and Prussia, and all those, the big countries that try to browbeat everybody into submission. So that's cool, but it's also computer games is always like, for me, is a sort of a double thing. It's like fun to play them, but then a couple hours later you go, oh, I wasted so much
What
time.
happened to my day, right? And
I could have done something more creative.
and that's Europa Universalis, is that right?
Yeah,
Very cool.
Europa Universalis.
That sounds really neat.
I think it's a yeah. It's not much action. It's like an extremely more detailed version of the campaign game of like Total War.
Yeah, okay. Well, that sounds really cool. You reading any books? I mean, you said lots of books. Who's your authors you read?
History stuff. Yeah, you guys got me on Audible.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've since I started reading, I pretty much read all of the Honorverse books.
What'd you think?
And they're great, right?
What'd you think of Weber?
David Weber is awesome, right? Sorry.
Well, it's your problem more than mine. I guess my experience is sort of the same as yours. The first books are, fast paced, and really you want to keep going, and it sort of slows down and slows down and slows the further you get, and you just keep going because you want to know how the story ends. But
you're still invested in the characters.
Yeah. But I've read all those, and now I'm reading some Patrick O'Brien.
Oh, that's good stuff.
I love Patrick O'Brien. What are you thinking of the books?
That's great. I've read a couple books as a paper book years ago, but they're great for listening to when you're painting or.
Yeah, the narrator's good too. Yeah, I like the Audible versions of those. The story gets the only problem. I mean, there's like 19 books or whatever. It's a huge series, but it sort of starts to repeat. Like the same. There's sort of like there's a book and a half of him stuck on shore, and then a book and a half back at sea, and then he's a book and a half stuck on shore. It's sort of there's sort of a yin yang thing there, but it's still good. I still love him. I love the character so much.
They start to blend together,
right? It's like was that
in a good way, but
was this the third time he was trapped on an island, or the second? I can never remember.
Right, exactly. Which is what you get when you get that many books all ending up in a series. Like the Hornblower books never got that many books all together.
Right.
So,
right. I still love them though. I can read those.
So do I.
Yeah. Let's see. So, anything else, Jasper?
I think that's about it.
That's pretty good. That's some pretty good. I think you can't really beat doing a thesis. That's pretty hardcore.
Most of that's already done, so that's a long time ago achievement.
Nice. Well, it's good to be getting it finalized. That's always
there. You go. Yeah. Good. Technically, you don't get the achievement until you're at this late level. So
that's right.
You had to work your way to this point.
To go then.
Now.
Oh, you just reverse the achievement, Craig? Is that what happened?
No, that was myself giving it an achievement.
Give another. Okay, we'll give. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, let's see. I'll go next. Let's see. Well, finished. I finished the first 2 books in the first Law series, and now I'm on book 3. This is the series by Joy Abercrombie. The first one's called The Blade Itself, and I was gushing about these. And Craig, I believe you just started reading these now too, or listening to them.
Yeah, I'm on chapter 43 of The Blade Itself, and first. Audible's awesome.
They are.
Second, I mean, and you can get this book for free, which is crazy. So if you haven't taken advantage of the D6 generation offer yet to go on Audible, this is the time to do it. This is the book to get.
Yes, it is.
This is an amazing series by, without a doubt, bar none, the best narrator I have ever heard in my life.
Yes, he's amazing.
He is amazing. Every one of these, and we say this every now and then. All the characters have these different, these different voices. No way, man. It sounds like it's like 50 different actors.
Yeah,
it's crazy and just amazing stuff. And you even recognize some of them. You're like, that's Patrick Stewart. I mean, it's just like, some really amazing acting, and it's not reading. He's acting. You can tell he's read. He's familiar with the book, so that he'll be like, "Oh, but why did he do that?" He said in a whiny voice. You're like, "Holy crap! He knew to whine before he got to the part where it said it's a whiny voice." I mean, that's a very obvious example, but like every line is read the way it's supposed to be read. It's clear. Most readers they're like reading the book, which is cool, and some of them even do voices and stuff. But this guy, whose name escapes me at the moment. knows like these characters and they're constant and it's the same voices. And like you said, Russ, the Inquisitor Galacto he's had every other one of his teeth ripped out.
Right.
So when he speaks, he has this horrific lisp, but when he's thinking in his head, it's the exact same voice with no lisp.
Right.
I mean, it's just crazy, unbelievable, awesome. And I have a comment for the listeners that sent me in the direction of thinking that this was a very nihilistic series, and that Joe Abercrombie was I don't know his other stuff. But this is not a nihilistic book at all. These are almost every character in this book is a good guy trying to be good in a bad situation that it's not working out.
Now maybe in the end,
it's not like we don't care. Oh, good guys die all the time. Da, da, da. It's like not like that at all.
Yeah, I don't think it's as dark as Game of Thrones actually.
No, I would say this to me reminds me of Game of Thrones meets Lord of the Rings meets the Belgariad.
Yeah.
That's what it's like to me. It's this really epic scope of a story that you don't even get how epic it is until you're mostly done with the first book.
With possibly better dialogue writing than all three put together. I mean, the dialogue is so good.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know about that.
I like it a lot.
I put it on a par with those books.
Yes, I would.
And I love all of those books. And same thing with Patrick Rothfuss's stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it, but I agree with Russ that this is I am enjoying listening to this more than I've probably enjoyed listening to anything yet from Audible or. I mean, it's crazy.
You cannot go wrong with this selection. And to check it out, go to our website and click on the Audible logo on the side. You get the free 30-day trial. You get a free credit. Get this book right at the back. Get the Blade itself. You will not be disappointed. Fantastic audiobook.
Unbelievable.
Possibly one of the best books I've read in a long time. So that's awesome. And I'm in the third book now, and I'm bummed because I think there's only 3 published. I don't know if he's planning on a fourth. I don't know how it ends.
Right. But I think there's another book that focuses on a different group of characters that are secondary in this series, but that are in the same universe.
Oh, I was just thinking this too, because I literally just started the third book today. Abercrombie does a good job also of not over-telling backstory. You know, like you want some backstory because if it's been a couple of years, because if you're reading the books as they come out, you might forget who's who. But when you're reading them back-to-back like this, it really, here we go again. We got to listen. But he doesn't. He just inserts a little bit. Oh, that's Tim, and then you're back into the book. It's so good. Really like it.
Cool.
Also,
put that on my wish list.
Oh, I definitely recommend it. If you couldn't tell. Also,
we're fans.
Now, speaking of network television, although I would not recommend that other show with muskets, I would recommend I would recommend Arrow.
Oh, please!
Have you seen Arrow yet?
You're kidding me.
No,
I don't even know what it is.
Okay? Arrow.
I'm just kidding.
Arrow is really fun. Now, it's a little bit campy. It's basically a new network show that just came out. It's on the 3rd episode of the season. It's basically Green Arrow, the superhero, comic book hero, but it's told in a universe where the heroes aren't superheroes. They're heroes, but they're not super, if that makes sense. It's sort of like real, almost like the earlier Batman stuff. It's like the hyper-realistic sort of thing. And it's really good. And it's got this interesting backstory.
It's on CW. Oh,
yeah, I know. I'm telling. Watch the show before you criticize. Just saying.
Okay.
What I like about it a lot is the fight choreography is fantastic. That's probably the best bit about the whole show, actually. But also the storytelling is great, and they got this little aspect where, and it's not spoiling anything because if you know Green Arrow's story, it's kind of like that because he's basically the biggest problem I have with the show is that Green Arrow is a total Bruce Wayne ripoff. I mean, he's almost the same character. So if you can get past that problem, but that's not from the show, that's the comic book. If you can get past that, it's fine. But there's a great mystery going on because he gets, he's presumed dead on this island forever. When he comes back, he's gone from whiny little rich brat to dark, brooding, kick butt superhero dude, who on the side though still pretends he's sort of a floppy millionaire, so that no one really remembers. That's sort of the Bruce Wayne part. But really, really good. And what's cool about it is you don't really know what happened to him on the island. So it's a backstory thing. It's kind of going flashbacks to what happened on the island, kind of like a Lost type thing, but then back to his superhero self. Really fun. And I'm really, really, really digging the action. Really great stuff. So great choreography, great athletics, really good show. Like Arrow, highly recommend it. Let's see what else. Oh, I finished XCOM. I think I mentioned this before on easy mode. And now I'm playing... Oh, I have to apologize too. So I'm playing XCOM Enemy Unknown. I think last episode I said... I'm not talking about XCOM, the first-person shooter. I'm talking about XCOM Enemy Unknown. I said, and I think I may have said, not talking about excellent first-person shooter. No one cares about that. They all care about everything. And then I got a nice email from someone saying, I'm just one of the developers on XCOM, the first-person shooter, and actually it's not too bad. You want to check it out? I'm like, so I don't know anything about that game. It might be awesome. I'm now going to take a look at it because it sounds like it's pretty cool. But when I'm playing...
guilt is a great motivator.
It is guilt. But XCOM Enemy Unknown is fantastic. I finished the main campaign, and now I'm trying to get on Iron Man. And what makes Iron Man tough, and you might be like this, Jasper, this is a game where you're going through. It's not historical anyway, right? You're fighting aliens, but you have your squad, and it's a tactical squad thing. But of course, the mode I played it, I can save at any time. So if I'm halfway through the battle, I'm about to do something stupid, and I know it's going to be kind of stupid, I can save. And if my main guy dies, I can restore. Well, in Iron Man mode, there's no going back. It just saves as you move forward, no matter what happens. So if you screw up and half your squad dies, you got to deal with it, train new people, come up from scratch. Much more realistic, but very challenging. So that's going to be kind of fun. And speaking of muskets, we've been talking a lot about muskets today. We've mentioned that show Revolution, which is not so worth watching. But we've also
I disagree.
Jasper has
immensely
been talking about all these great games that have muskets in them.
Yeah,
and muskets are hot right now because Assassin's Creed 3 just came out.
Yeah, that looks cool. And I don't play video games.
And I've been so busy that I actually have it shrink wrapped, so I haven't even got to it yet. But it's what I like about it is it takes place during the American Revolution, and the main protagonist is a American Indian. So he's out there kicking butt, taking names, killing redcoats, all kinds of crazy nonsense. Looks really cool. It's a great time period. I don't think there's no video games in that time period. It's really, really cool. So that looks a lot of fun. And then, of course, Halo 4 is coming on deck. So I just got to squeeze all these video games into my... and as you mentioned, Jasper, it's like, how much time do I just waste on video games? But it's kind of like reading a good book. It's a great story. And all those things... are not getting played. Like I said, Assassin's Creed still in its wrapper because I just got back from Hawaii. And I have to say thanks to a couple of listeners who really helped me out. So before I went to Hawaii, it was our first family trip out there. We had an absolute wonderful time. And I can say this, they call Hawaii paradise for a reason. I discovered there are no venomous spiders. There are no poisonous snakes. There are very few. I think we got bit by one mosquito the entire time we were there. And you cannot take a bad picture on this island. I'm convinced if you drop a camera and accidentally snap the photo, it's still a postcard. I mean, every picture I showed, it was just like, oh my God, the sun's setting behind that palm tree. I totally shot that by accident. It's like just such a beautiful place. Want to send a special thanks to listener Jamie L. I didn't get permission to say his last name. So Jamie, thank you so much. He lives in Oahu, which is where I was. And he was like giving me real-time tips. So he sent me this really long email. And I'm like, and with all these great places to go and places to eat. And I emailed him back in the middle of my vacation. Jamie, I'm heading to the west side of the island. Where should I go? Oh, go here. It was just awesome. It's like a little virtual tour guide. So thank you so much. And thanks to Matt Morgan on Twitter. Matt recommended I go to Snorkel Bob's, and I rented really affordably snorkel gear for the whole family for a week, which is awesome. We had it in the rent-a-car trunk, and where we go, we're like, let's try that little pond out, or alcove over there out, and we'd go snorkeling. It was awesome. And Matt writes for MTV Geek, so give us a little plug for him there for helping me out. Thank you, Matt. And also thanks to Jeff Engelstein, of course, who does some stuff for the Dice Tower Network or something. Thanks, Jeff. He recommended,
and designs games.
He does. Some kind of famous game designer or something. He recommended Matsumoto Shave Ice. And this is
coincidentally, he was on MTV Geek.
He was. There you go. See, small
look
world.
At all that. Look, that's synergy right
that's
there.
That's that 5 degrees of separation with Jeff and everybody on the planet. So, Shave Ice. I have to talk about Shave Ice just a second because I don't know who's actually eaten Hawaiian Shave Ice before. It's
Matsumoto.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too is the Japanese culture is so pervasive in Hawaii. It's really interesting. Like, here in the States, most of the States here, everything's in Spanish and English, right? Yeah. Not so in Hawaii. Everything's in English and Japanese on the signs. I mean, everywhere. Wow. And if you think you're kind of like in Chinatown or something, well, of course it's Japanese, not Chinese, but you think you're kind of like there, but it's not. It's everything's just that way. And also, just a food side, I have to talk about this. Rice is everywhere. And every dish looks like it's almost. In fact, it was at a point where Nicole and I we got to go to Japan next. This is just so cool. So it was like McDonald's, the breakfast plates. And I didn't eat at McDonald's in Japan in Hawaii. Just everybody knows. I was just walking by McDonald's, and there's like these signs on the thing, and it's like, first of all, two things in Hawaii about the food. First of all, rice is in every dish instead of French fries or anything. It's rice, and even breakfast. And second of all, Spam is available everywhere. Spam is like a staple in Hawaii. Like McDonald's breakfast platter, Spam, rice, and an egg. That's a McDonald's breakfast platter in Hawaii. And even if you go to like their ABC stores, which is essentially a 7-Eleven, they have like sushi wraps there to get because the Japanese thing. But one of the sushi options is always Spam wrapped in a seaweed around a bed of rice. It's like, what the? It was just Spams everywhere. It was really, really surprising.
Try it.
I've had Spam before, and it tastes the same as Spam. And I'm not a big Spam hater or anything. It's just Spam. It's just sort of interesting to see. It's such a the rest of the country's like, really, you're gonna eat Spam, But of course, it's sold everywhere. But the other thing about Hawaii though is there's not just Spam. If you go to the grocery, in fact, I tweeted a picture of this. If you go to the grocery store, they have like a shelf of like 10 different flavors of Spam, and literally Spam with bacon, Spam with garlic, Spam with you name it. Spam with macadamia.
Spam.
It's crazy. There's Spam everywhere.
Spam.
And the last thing I want to talk about is the shave ice. So the Matsumoto shave ice. So the big thing about this, I always thought that shave ice, when you see it on a TV show or something, that was like a snow cone. But actually, it's not. Snow cones are very granular. They're very like almost like beady little bits of ice. Shave ice is like it's almost like eating a snowball. It's very, very light. And then the big thing about where to go for shave ice is the different flavors they put into the shave ice. So like they'll actually mix up their own flavors there. And then the other thing they put on top of shave ice, if you really know what you're doing, you have them put the condensed milk. I know, right? Condensed milk on top of your shave ice. And it is so good. It should be illegal. Anyway, so that was some of the food I had. But thank you so much, everybody who helped out and gave me some great recommendations. Our family had a great time. And we'll talk later in this episode about some of the things that the places I went to inspire me for gaming while I was there too. But it was just a really good time.
Cool.
So that was my Hawaiian experience. So, Craig, what have you been doing?
I've been talking about the Blade itself. On my Kindle, I'm trying to read Fear to Tread, or whatever the latest Horus Heresy book is about. I've talked about it already on the podcast. It's about the Blood Angels, and that says it all, because I just can't get into it. I find myself reading magazines, War Games, Soldier, and Strategy, for instance, instead of reading this book, which is kind of alarming to me, because I really love the Horus Heresy books, but I don't really like the Blood Angels, and the book's just not really calling to me, and so I feel bad. I do have my Horus Heresy Betrayal book from Forge World is at our friend Shifty Will's house.
Nice.
That's a $120 book. Woohoo! Haven't really looked at it yet. Don't know that I'll be buying any more.
$120
but
book.
$120 book.
Wow.
But it does look lovely. I mean, it's all those Forge World books look lovely, but I haven't even really gotten. I've just flipped through somebody else's copy briefly. Thanks, Ryan. So that's interesting. I started out on Extra Life. I got this idea that it would be really cool to have like a really quick Dust campaign, like a little mini campaign that would only involve 1 or 2 battles total. And I tried to put it together, but nobody had their Dust stuff. That's not true. Brian had his, I had mine, but nobody else brought theirs. So we did the map section of mine just using the Mighty Empire's tiles. Had a really good time, but I didn't have anything written up for it. So I've been writing up in my free time over the last couple of weeks, just a really quick and dirty little mini campaign for Dust that actually has battle builders that are unique to the terrain that you'd be in, and does a couple other things using the actual Dust system and the dice that go with Dust to kind of like make this cool little campaign that actually has a little book, an order booklet, so you're like writing out your orders ahead of time, like you would in World War II, and you have to record them, and then everybody reveals their orders at the same time, so people are moving around on the map simultaneously. And then I made a little journal so that each turn you record all the stuff that you've done, just so you can track all of your little pins on the map and what each pin represents. And so really looking forward to that. We were going to try to play it this week, but Real World caught up to Russ and I both at the same time, and we both had to bail. So hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we're going to try that out and see how much how cool that can be, because I think it's going to be awesome. And if it works, I'm going to try to get a couple guys that are better at graphic design than I am to kind of kick it up a notch as far as the way it looks.
Nice.
Rodney, I'm talking to you. And so, and then my Project X, my writing has been brutal because I'm writing in excess of things for Fantasy Flight. And those of you who've been tracking that will know what that means. And my Project X has really gotten out of hand. The company that I'm working for in secret right now for this huge project that's coming up, they actually moved forward. It got fast forwarded, some of it, so that I'll be able to talk about it soon, I'm hoping. Ooh. And one of the I'm hoping it comes out really cool. It's the first time I've ever done anything like this, and it's super, super amazingly exciting for me to be able to do everything that I'm doing and this brand new project that I can't talk about yet, but I can talk about soon. And the theory is that it's going to be available on January 1st. So that's much, much closer than it was going to be. But unfortunately, that means that I'll be spending the next 7 days writing something that I've never type of thing I've never really written before, because we're like super vamping things up. So that's super exciting to me. I can't wait to talk about it. It's extremely exciting. And we just brought on board another person that's needed to fill this the team that we're building, and he's amazingly talented. So super excited to talk about it. Hopefully you'll be able to get your hands on it January 1st.
Nice.
So that's me and my other Gamely stuff.
Is that achievements?
That is achievements.
Worlds to conquer, foes to vanquish, violence to sow, and medieval crops to reap. The whole world of gaming at your fingertips. The D6 generation, born to game.
My favorite gaming software company. Time to talk to my boys at Wolf Lair. They do an awesome job at Lone Wolf Development. They are fantastic at getting the best software you need to keep track of all your good hotness. Latest release of Army Builder 3.4a just came out with all kinds of cool updates and fixes.
Army Builder is awesome.
Especially if you're a Mac user now, you got a Macintosh, not a problem. It runs just fine on there natively right there in the Mac OS.
You know what just got released too are the data files for X-Wing.
Yes, they just came out.
For
One of the fans
Army
put that out
Builder,
there. So how Army Builder works, just for everybody who doesn't know, is the software, you pay for the software, and then fans of their favorite game enter the data files, and they get centralized on the website, and you just download them. So Army Builder doesn't provide the data files, but it provides everything else you need, and then you can just quickly download the data files you want. And a happy little X-Wing fan has already put them out there, so you can crank those out, get your lists up to date really quickly, ready to rock. Handle the point values, figure out how you're going to handle all your upgrades for your ships. It's really great. Hero Labs, the Pathfinder beginner box stuff's out now for that. Their special equipment's up there now. The Hero Lab is awesome too. Hero Lab is great because it takes care of your character maintenance for all your favorite RPGs. Pathfinder and Shadowrun and all the other ones are in there. Again, it's got those generic data file builders. If you want to build it for your own RPG or a small RPG you play, not a problem. You can do that as well with Hero Lab. And then, of course, there is new things on the horizon coming up there, like Realmworks. Is being previewed right now. It's really slick.
Realmworks.
I can't wait for Realmworks to get out there. I really can't. I know they're doing work on it right now really hard, make sure they get it exactly right. But Realmworks is fantastic. A great way to organize your thoughts as a GM. I want to use it for Iron Kingdoms RPG. I can't wait to get that going. Just great stuff. So head on over to wolflair.com and check out all the latest for your needs to take care of your gaming automation right there at wolflair.com.
And now, what's in the news? With the shout-out, Nothing Personal, a game of bribery and blackmail from Dice Tower Designs, powered by Game Salute. Pledge now at Kickstarter.com. A lot of news this week, so let's get right to it. Up first, unless you've been living under a rock, you now know that Disney has bought Lucasfilm. That's right. Two great tastes. I don't know.
Hey, maybe we'll get the Star Wars we used to know.
What do you mean, Wakeland?
Well, Disney's the master of re-releasing every movie known to man. Maybe they'll re-release this and we'll get the original version of Star Wars that we used to know, like the song says.
What song are you talking about?
You haven't heard the song about used to know Star Wars?
No,
listen for the Easter egg at the end of the show. I'm telling you, it's great.
Okay, whatever, Wakeland. Anyway, another entertainment news. For those of you who have cut the cord like Wakeland,
Yeah, baby, going on 3 years.
CBS has announced they are now coming to Hulu Plus. This January, CBS will make a lot of their programming available on Hulu. So that'll be great. Most of the major networks are now on Hulu, which is excellent if you're a cord cutter. Let's see. How about some video game news here? I know Wakeland's been playing a lot of Assassin's Creed.
Oh, I'm loving it.
Now, is Assassin's Creed 3 really...
It's not really the best game ever or anything, but I love the historical period.
Oh, so you're into the little tricorder hats and the muskets and everything?
Oh, yeah.
I thought you didn't like muskets.
I don't like muskets in 2020. Am I something wrong with that?
Okay, whatever. Anyway, moving right along from Assassin's Creed. Also in video game news, Skyrim dragon riding. You've been looking for riding a dragon maybe in Skyrim? Well, now you can. Coming December 24th. The latest dragon DLC for Skyrim will include the ability to ride dragons and fight from their backs. Pretty cool. Let's see what else. Let's see.
Lego Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. How can that be bad? Coming this January, Lego's announced to be releasing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle products. Good geek news there for you. Let's see. Let's get back to miniature wargaming here. How about some Dystopian Legions? They've announced recently the Series 2 of a bunch of their new products. Oh, have you seen the steam-powered jet bikes for the Blazing Suns? Oh! Apparently they're pretty cool according to Wakeland, so if you've been looking for some 28mm strange steampunk stuff, check that out. Back to video games here. I don't know how this snuck through, but let's see. Remember Chris Roberts, the guy who wrote games like you might remember such as Wing Commander and Privateer? Well, Chris Roberts is back on Kickstarter announcing a new project called Star Citizen. It's already fully funded and running along great, making some mad money. So if you're interested in space combat simulators for the PC and were a fan of the old Wing Commander series, you may want to check out Star Citizen. Let's see, a lot of fantasy for like gaming. There's actually a lot of games being released this month. So let's go to the old Game Salute news list here and see what's coming on here. Oh, first of all, Merchant of Venus, according to Fantasy Flight Games, is now on sale. If you're a big Merchant of Venus fan, there you go. Also up, coming this November, this month actually, Descent, the Lair of the Wyrm expansion. So if you're a big Descent 2 fan, now you get your first expansion for Descent 2. That looks pretty awesome. New heroes, secret rooms, all kinds of crazy nonsense. Let's see. Legends of Ondor is coming out. Looks like a co-op adventure dungeon board game there. Warhammer Relic, the Warhammer 40,000 Talisman. Oh, we don't need any more Talisman. Easy, Wakeland, it's news. Got to cover it. So Talisman, Gone Warhammer 40,000 is coming out in Warhammer Relic. It is now out this month also. If you're a Stronghold Games fan, you may want to know that the first expansion for Core Worlds will be available this month. Crude, the oil game. We got a couple shipped here. We got a copy of Crude as well as Article 27 for review copies here at the D6G. I have to say, they look pretty solid, and they are now going to be available for sale this month if you're looking to become an oil baron, or maybe you want to be a member of the UN, banging your shoe on the table or whatnot. Check both those games out for Stronghold Games. And, of course, the big Stronghold Games Inglestein collaboration, Space Cadets, is also coming out this month. So keep an eye on that as well. And that's what's in the news.
This is the D6 Generation Podcast. More fun than Merchant of Venus. Wait, what? Who writes this? That's impossible.
Welcome back. And we figured since we have Jasper here with us this time around, and since Jasper is a well-known publisher of historically based documents, would that be a fair statement?
Documents.
Documents, yeah. Well, magazine is a document, I suppose.
Indeed, right. So
it is.
We figured, a lot of our listeners have asked us, what's the deal with historical gaming? I'd like to know more about it. How do I get involved with it? And we figured we basically have an expert here with us this evening. We're very excited to say.
We do.
Yeah.
So Jasper, we're gonna grill you, if you don't mind, on the wonder that is historical gaming. How does that sound?
That's okay. That's a good way to test whether a self-pronounced expert is actually an expert.
Right.
There you go.
Exactly. So let's start off at the very beginning, and I think this, it's sort of one of those phrases that is self-defining, but let's go there anyway. What exactly is the definition of a historical game? What would you define that as?
It's a good question. Yeah, I kind of knew that you were going to ask this, and I wasn't really sure.
So you are or are not prepared.
I may or may not be. It's in the middle of the night. It may or may not work that I was maybe prepared or not.
Good point.
Well, the thing is, historical wargaming, it's pretty easy to sort of give a stereotypical interpretation. Everybody just does. Everybody refights the Battle of Waterloo 500 times, and sometimes Napoleon actually does win.
Ooh. So is it okay to have non-historical results? Is that still legit?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
otherwise, what's the point,
there's no point playing a game otherwise, is there?
Right, fair enough. All right.
But for WSS, we have a more of a wider interpretation. We just sort of say, well, anything that might have happened on this Earth. That's basically because the editor, as you know, Guy Bowers, who works with me, he would like to be able to introduce maybe zombies sometime or something that's a little bit more out there.
But could possibly happen on this Earth.
Right. So he's open to more.
Maybe.
He's got a broader interpretation, but is there sort of a strict official definition, or do you guys get little letters in the email box when you guys go too far off from whatever the
That's a good question.
strict definition is?
No.
No. Okay.
Something tells me that the historical gamer community is probably less violently active than, say, some of the more rabid fanboy bases in science fiction and fantasy gaming.
I don't know. Maybe, yeah. If I guess if you take out the word rabid, they're pretty active.
Oh, I have no doubt active.
And they're pretty fractious, and they have lots of opinions. They're certainly less massively focused on just a limited number of games.
Right.
They're all over the place, which is the fun part and sometimes a difficult part.
Now, do you see, or do you find with most historical gamers, do they gravitate towards specific historical periods or specific, like maybe game mechanics, or is it kind of like most historical gamers are just interested in real life stuff, sort of?
Yeah, I think everybody is just, you play a historical war game because you're interested in the era.
Yeah,
I think that's the motivation of everybody, and then a historical war game is one that you feel captures the spirit of, as in the spirit of the law instead of the letter of the law of the historical era. So you have the right units, the right tactics, the sort of terrain is right for the era, for the wherever you are in the world. And sure, people gravitate towards. There's a couple of periods that are more popular than other ones, and I mean, you can probably predict which one is going to be the most popular, and the number two is not too hard to think of either.
Why don't you give us those? I would guess World War II is the most popular.
Yeah.
And then I have no idea what would Russ. You guess the second most popular.
Second most popular period would be Rome.
I would say Civil War.
Ancient battles.
Yeah, ancient history is number 2 or number 3, but probably Napoleonic is number 2.
Oh, okay. All right.
I wish I had thought of that. That makes sense.
Okay.
Although in America it might be the
American Civil War.
I think it's still Napoleonic worldwide.
I think it's Napoleonic here too. From what I've seen locally.
So basically, any game that's based in some amount of history, you guys would call a historical war game. But there are folks out there who say, well, if it's not emulating actual history, because there's been some debate. For example, I think I've heard people say anyway that Flames of War isn't truly a historical war game because you can reenact fictitious battles, or you can have non-theater engagements. Is that a fair critique, or is that too?
Well, let's not go into that specific example, I guess. But I think you would add that it has something that could have happened, and you hopefully can get historical opponents. And I think historical tactics preferably, and that's where you get a bit of a problem. Some people have a problem with Flames of War.
Because the tactics aren't historically accurate? Is that the...
Yeah, there's some say that, there's an often heard complaint that it's just, tanks lined up, wheelbase to wheelbase, and just move forward, and whoever's got the coolest, biggest gun wins, which of course is not true, but
that's what people feel. Yeah.
You could say that it might be a bit more about the game than somebody who uses the historical tactics correctly. But on the other end, it's a tournament game, which is also difficult.
Right.
Anyway, I would say that historical units, more or less historically appropriate opponents with hopefully historical tactics.
So
okay,
and that kind of segues into the next thing I wanted to ask you about, which is how important is the accuracy of not only the game, but especially if you're looking at the miniature side of things, right? How important are the models and how you paint them and assemble them is sort of, I guess I always get nervous, because sometimes I like to try. I'm intimidated, I guess is the right word to use, in playing in the historical theme scene, because I'm not sure I know enough about a particular era, and I might paint someone's pants the wrong color or something like that. Is it that? Should I be that concerned, or is that something that's just in my head? And what are the areas where you really want to be historically accurate?
Are people going to give you grief if you paint your Space Marines you pick a certain chapter and you paint them in the unofficial colors?
Well, I don't think. Hopefully not, but I think there actually are people out there to do that. But no, I would say no, no, sir.
In the best of all possible worlds, no.
No.
This wouldn't happen. Well, it's probably the same way with historical wargaming.
Okay.
Although I think if you're really interested in a certain period, you want to do it right.
Right.
And then you can have, there's people who want to have endless debates about, about does that a certain Napoleonic French regiment, or no, French is not obscure enough, from some of those tiny German states that fought in the Napoleonic Wars, did they have tin or brass colored buttons on the inside of their fly? It's all relative. There's people who really think it's very important. There's people who just more about, I want to play a good game and I want to have it historically inspired. And if it's not entirely correct, I'll proxy it or.
Okay.
Do you think, going along with accuracy, do you think the majority of historical war games and historical war gamers are those that try to emulate those real battles and use the accurate orders of battle and try to lay out the terrain in ways that approximate real life, or is it more of a like for instance, in 40K maybe there are quote unquote historical battles, and every now and then you get a group that wants to put one together and they play it out, but for the most part people are looking for an even game where it's everybody's got the same point levels and the terrain is random, and so you're just trying to basically test each other within the rules. Is there that desire, do you think, amongst historical war gamers, or is it more of an attempt to recreate something that already happened and then try to manipulate that to a more advantageous result for your side, so to speak?
Well, the majority thing is, I don't think anybody has any numbers except that everybody knows that Flames of War is the biggest. So if you ask it that way, then Flames of War is the biggest, and therefore that's the majority. And then you're done. But the tournament, or really the tournament and point setup is important, but it's definitely not. I don't think it's the majority of all historical war games. There's quite a few that use a more scenario-based setup. Going with the argument that in history, not the trick is to come with an imbalanced, to have an imbalance in your forces so that you actually have a better chance to win. So some games are way more scenario-based, but the scenario would probably then be based around something that could happen or that's an interesting situation, rather than a perfect copy of something that actually happened. Does that make sense?
Yep.
That makes sense. Totally. Okay, that's accuracy. So let's think about, now I'm also curious, when you're looking at getting an historical war game, obviously, as you mentioned earlier, the period that you're most interested in is, just from a pure interest level, is probably going to be where you're going to gravitate to in terms of choosing which game you want to try out or learn. Are there different eras that are easier to get into? Are there eras where there's more game variety, or there's more rule mechanic variety, or easier to get to miniatures, or are the players just friendlier? I don't want to get, but is there an era where it starts out easier to get into?
I would say that there's probably enough variety to satisfy anybody if you're really willing to look in any era. It really mostly depends on what period are you interested in, what scale of miniatures are you interested in, and what scale of battle are you interested in.
Okay.
It's a very stupid example, but if you want to start out, you've never done historical wargaming, and you want to, you've seen maybe a painting of a Napoleonic battlefield and you want to start out with, core level Napoleonic game in 28 mil because it would look cool, it undoubtedly would, then you might be biting off a bit much.
Right.
I mean, you're looking at, hundreds of figures just to begin.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you decided, well, I'm not really into painting that many figures in 28 mil, but I think the mass idea would look good, I might go with 6 mil. That becomes much more achievable. Because, if you learn the right technique, then you can paint a whole regiment of 6 mil Napoleonic figures in probably an hour. And then it's, 8 regiments, couple hours worth work. And you got yourself 2 division corps, I guess.
Giant army.
Right.
Yeah.
Of tiny little men.
Very tiny. Yeah.
Right. So what? And while we're here, I'll just ask you: do you have a favorite era? I know you're.
I think, like most historical war games, it sort of switches around. I started out with Ancients, and I'm being really interested lately in the American War of Independence, American Revolution, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Not coincidentally, the theme of our next issue.
Ooh, look at that little teaser there. Nice.
Yep.
It'll be a must get.
It will be a must get.
Which sounds a lot like musket.
Yes.
Sorry.
World War II, we've been trying to get into. We've actually over the last year done various platoon size 28 mil. I'm really into 28 mil. I've tried smaller scales, but it's not really my thing. My background in wargaming is I really come from the modeling side. That's another difference, I think, in gamers. But gamers overall, there's those miniature war gamers who just really go for the game, and people who are also very interested in, making the figures look good, getting nice terrain, and the visual aspect is really important. And I'm probably more into that side than the game itself. So I've been painting World War II 28 mil figures as well, trying to get a game. So
cool.
A bit of everything.
Nice.
If you give me enough.
There you go.
and while because we're also talking about how it is eras to get into, which era got you hooked? How did you get started? Was it World War II, or which era got you pulled in?
No, Ancients.
Ancients. Oh, you mentioned that. Okay.
Yeah.
Ancients.
Well, that's my it's my personal original interest.
Yeah.
And I just got I met up with a group of guys who were very much into Warhammer Ancient Battles.
Yeah.
Which sadly is officially defunct, but there's no reason.
I always thought Ancients was a great idea, and I like the idea that you could cheat historically, because basically you could grab any ancient army and fight any other ancient army, right? So it was kind of like you could just see you could do those little what if things. What if Hannibal fought the Gauls? Kind of thing. And just go at it. So that was neat.
That's not so strange anyway.
Well,
I was gonna say.
Well,
you kind of have to work your way through them,
right? Well, yes. All right. So how about? So let's talk about. We mentioned eras to get into. What are some of the good systems? If you're, let's say you like a couple different eras, but you're really looking for sort of a system that sort of eases you into the whole historical realm. What are some of the systems you'd recommend, or you'd like to take a good foot?
Yeah, let's get into the primer part of this.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I would say to start off with is that, the great advantage, I think, of historical wargaming is that you can start out with one rule set with a certain, you buy a couple figures, you start out with a certain set, and then you go, okay, I like this set maybe as well, which is for the same period. I'll just buy a couple extra figures, and now I can sort of upgrade my game. And you can go doing that until you go from, a tiny skirmish to a huge battle.
Yeah, and you don't have to necessarily get new models, because if you're interested in the same time period, you're just getting new rules.
Exactly.
Right.
Or you just buy a few extra. You don't have to. It's not all tied into one game. So that you want to go try another game, you have to buy into the whole thing all over again. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously, it's different if you switch to period. But if you're well, if you were interested in Napoleonics, there is a very popular skirmish Napoleonic war game. It's called Sharp Practice, after the a very funny play on words on Sharp, the TV show. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah, right.
That's Napoleonic wargaming, but then it's all adventurous, and you get to save the pretty Spanish lady and kick the evil Frenchman back to France, and yada yada yada. And you can start that with maybe 20 figures aside, which for Napoleonic wargaming is just like nothing.
Right.
And then you can actually there's one game. Now, come to think of it, there's a rule set that goes with even fewer figures. Anyway, so you could start with something real small and then find a rule set that caters to maybe 2 regiments. So you go from 20 to 40 or 50 guys, and you go, oh, I like this. Maybe I'll try another bigger game again. And you can just keep expanding it a little bit, and you go from rule set to rule set, or not even necessarily from rule set to rule set, and just sort of ease yourself into the game. Nice. And into the era. That seems something that would work real well for, especially if you're more into 28 mil. I mean, if you decided you want to go for a small scale, and obviously you're going to go with more figures, a bigger battle right away, because that's a different way of working. You're going to be mass producing figures and units. And keeping your costs low at the same time.
Neat. I've loved the idea that because I do mostly sci-fi and fantasy miniature gaming, but I like the idea if I can start a skirmish game, and in the time it takes me to paint 1 unit for an army scale game, I can have my entire force done for a skirmish game. And I never really thought about that approach for historical gaming, but it makes total sense. And the idea that you can use the same models and eventually build them up into a larger action is really kind of neat, because it gives you a story for your models too, which is really cool.
Yeah, well, I can give, as an example for myself, as I said, I'm really interested in the American War of Independence. So, and I have Black Powder is a wargaming rule set for pretty big battles. I mean, it's written by Rick Priestley. You might know him.
Oh, yeah.
Warlord Games production. It's they've written it and laid it out it's very British, and it's their real idea is this is how we like to play games, and the way the Warlord crew likes to play games is get their friends over, people like Rick Priestley, the Prairie Brothers. People have been into this hobby for a bit, and who have huge collections, and they have a gaming table 6 by 12 feet or something. And they, fill it all up with their very nice collections of Napoleonics, and then they want to fight a big battle in 2 to 3 hours, so they can go out and have a curry. Very English.
Nice.
And the game is very, very cleverly written. It's very easy to pick up, and it sometimes looks tempting. The book is one of the sort of probably one of the first of the sort of new generation of glossy hardback,
full color kind of jobbies. Yeah,
nicely laid out rule books for historical wargaming. And you pick that book up and you go, "Ooh, me want." But then there's the practical problem that you need, dozens and dozens of figures.
Right.
And I pretty early decided that I was going to want to do the AWI.
Now, what's AWI?
That would be American War for Independence.
There we go.
But, getting to that point of having, I think the game is sort of designed to be played with at least 10 to 12 units per side. 10 to 12 regiments then, and, regiments probably going to be at least 20 figures. Right. So, do the math. A bit much to start out with. But now there is, pretty recently, a game that was published, Muskets and Tomahawks.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And that's a game for French and Indian War and American War of Independence. It's a skirmish game. And it's a really fun one too, and you need maybe 20 guys.
Oh, nice.
You need a couple of American, traditional riflemen. Maybe if you were talking about the War of Independence, a couple of militia.
Right.
Maybe some continental soldiers.
Mm-hmm.
And the game is points based, and it goes from 200 up to 600 points. And at 600 points, you've probably got a regiment or two. You can maybe have a piece of artillery.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got that whole expansion built into it almost. And by the time you're at 600 points, you might have enough, if you're a little clever,
To flip over. Yeah.
to go over to Black Powder.
Oh, very cool. That's really neat. Now, are the games you're talking about now, Muskets and Tomahawks and Black Powder, are those what I would call full systems where the same manufacturer produces, or the same company produces the models and the rule sets? Or are you looking at buying the rules from the rules publisher and then going and finding your favorite models from whomever you can find them from?
That goes really for all of historical wargaming.
Okay.
Of course, Elephant in the Room, Flames of War, Battlefront, they produce everything.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's really no reason you have to use them. I mean, not that I want to promote people from moving away from them, but it's historical wargaming, so nobody has copyright on anything.
Right.
It's can't copyright it.
Right.
So as long as you have models,
I'm pretty sure Games Workshop tried.
If anybody would.
Sorry. Moving on.
And there's definitely, it works the same way for Games Workshop as it does in historical wargaming. If you put out a new rule set that is going to attract a lot of people, then if you're a clever manufacturer, you make sure you have a range of figures to support that.
Mm-hmm.
Because people are going to go, ooh, I have the rule set here, and now I need some figures. Oh, they're right here. Thank you.
Right.
Has anybody done that other than Battlefront?
Well, Warlord Games is pretty much doing it they just published Bolt Action, and they have a very big World War II 28 mil range.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They had an awesome setup at Adepticon where they were actually playing an episode of Band of Brothers, and they had a table that perfectly replicated the battle scene that was playing on the big screen TV they had going at the same time. And they had a mission that was basically trying to get the Americans into I think they were in Belgium at that time, trying to get them into the town. It was a really cool kind of combination of the TV and the models, and of course they had the whole city that was all done up, and it looked really, really cool, especially from a non-historical guy like me. It kind of sucked me right in.
That's how it works. Movies are a very very common way to inspire people to go and play a period. Mm-hmm. Movies and books, but yeah, they do it. I mean, they can't tie you in, but of course they try to promote their own figure range. Musket and Tomahawk is originally French. It's being published by Gripping Beast in the UK, mm-hmm. who have they mostly do Dark Ages type figures and Ancients. But as soon as it came out, everybody started to offer starter sets with their particular range of figures. So you get that more and more, and whole starter boxes are starting to come out as well.
Yeah, I'm looking at a Spartan starter box as we speak.
Neat. So there are options there, even though they're different manufacturers than the rules publisher. You can go find starter boxes for various forces for different eras and things, which is nice.
Yes, and that's kind of new because plastics in historical wargaming is a thing. Mm-hmm. What's actually kind of strange. Of course, historical wargaming started with Airfix plastics in the in the 70s. Well, no, it started way earlier, but it had a big boost when Airfix came out with those 72nd or 76th scale army men type things. Mm-hmm. But then they that sort of disappeared, and plastic started to make a comeback from, I think, 2007 or 6, and it's getting more and more common. So it's becoming affordable for manufacturers to put together a big box with lots of plastics and put in a cheap version of the rule set, and hey presto, you go. Flames of War is about to, or it has just released their new starter set.
Yep. It's beautiful, all plastic. It looks really nice.
Who was that?
I was just saying, it's beautiful. It's all plastics. It's really nice.
What is?
Sorry. The new Flames of War starter sets.
Oh, yeah.
I think Warlord Games are going to do that, or have. I think they've announced something like that.
Yeah.
There's sometimes cooperate too. There's an English rules designer. They're called Two Fat Lardies.
Yes.
And they have published a game called Dux Britanniarum, which is all about is sort of a fairly large skirmish game for sort of the historical era where King Arthur belongs. So sort of the 5th, 6th centuries AD in the UK. And they teamed up with Gripping Beast again, and Gripping Beast put together starter armies, and Two Fat Lardies is now selling mega bundles with a starter army, or two starter armies, one for each side, the rules, the cards, everything in one go. There's a well-known 6mm manufacturer called Bacchus.
Mm-hmm.
They've been doing it actually for a couple of years already, I think. They just sell basically a game in a box. 6mm armies, a couple of houses of terrain. You get a sheet with flags. You get the rule set. Everything for, what is it? I don't know, £90 or something.
Mm-hmm. How are the rules in those kinds of? Are those still quality rule sets? Would you recommend those?
Well, yeah. It depends on whether you're interested in them.
Right.
I haven't played the 6mm Bacchus ones. There's a lot of enthusiastic response to Dux Britanniarum.
Mm-hmm.
Flames of War, yourself.
Right.
But again, the advantage of historical wargaming is if you don't like Flames of War as a game itself, but
right.
you like the starter set to have, 2 starter armies for World War II, you pick up the starter set, put the armies together, find a different rule set.
Yeah.
Because it's like there's no other rule sets for World War II. The same with the, if you buy 2 starter armies in 6mm from Bacchus and you decide you don't like their Polymos rules, you can use black powder for 6mm, not a problem.
Yeah. Let me ask. I'm curious about this because I do think it's interesting, and I think that's probably the biggest difference. I know there are, fantasy miniature gamers out there and sci-fi miniature gamers out there who do, have a set of figures and they swap the rules out, and there are generic rule sets out there for miniatures. But I think by and large,
I would say that's a minority. Yeah.
Most folks buy the miniatures that go with the game, if that makes sense, with the rule set, right?
Yeah.
Where in historical, it seems really interesting to me that you can. It's sort of like plug and play. Once you got your models, you just find the rule set that best fits your tastes and your. Can you give me the high level? Because I think I've seen a lot of bolt action myself. And I like the idea of World War II gaming. It's just that I think I've said on the show before, it's too realistic for me, But I like the idea of it, and I've played a lot of Flames of War. I get the rule mechanics there, and I see a lot of bolt action going on. What do you think some of the pros and cons of each of those systems, just at a very high level? Like, why do you think some people pick bolt action over Flames of War, and why do other folks lean towards Flames of War over bolt action? Or is that a good question?
I think part of it is going to be. I think an important consideration for everybody is always going to be community. Mm-hmm. Are my friends going to play this game? Yes or no? No. Well, what's the point starting the game? Right. Bolt action has, of course, the advantage that it's pretty small. It's basically a platoon level game in 28mm. If you already have Flames of War, there's no reason you can't use your bases and as if they were bolt action teams. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, you can have buy a box of plastic Germans and a box of plastic Americans from Warlord Games, and you're looking at £40 probably, maybe 50. Done. 25 guys aside, you can play a game.
So Bolt Action is more of a skirmish rule set as opposed to Flames of War being the full larger forces.
Well, depending on and how elite they are, but if you're a 500-point or 1,000-point game is probably going to be maybe 25, 30 figures, a tank, a cannon. That's about it.
Okay.
The disadvantage of World War II games, of course, of all of them, but especially skirmish World War II games, is that you're going to need a lot of terrain.
Right.
World War II being what it is, if your figures are out in the open, they're generally very quickly dead.
Right.
Whatever rule set you play. And Flames of War is of course, is a bigger game just to start out with. If you want to go to 1,500 or 1,750 points, you're probably going to be spending more. You're going to have to put together a bigger army. Well, you know that yourself.
Right.
As a rule set, I think Flames of War is probably easy to start out with, but it takes a while before you know all 300 pages. And action is, by comparison, is easy as pie.
Okay, it's good to know. So again, Bolt Action might be that nice if you're interested in dabbling in World War II, but you don't want to have a lot of models to paint. Maybe Bolt Action is a place to start. Take a look, get your toe in the water, see what you think. Right?
Yeah. Although, upgrading Bolt Action to Flames of War, that would be hard if you do it from 28 mil to 15 mil. So
right.
You might. Right. But you could, if you wanted to consider that route, if you're planning to go that way, you could buy, a platoon box of 50 mil Flames of War figures and a tank. You'd be out even, it's an even lower cost to start out with. You might have to base them differently or something, but there's no reason you couldn't.
That's a great idea. I hadn't really thought about that before. It's really interesting. So
keep rain cheap too, or cheaper.
So we've talked a lot about miniature games and the different ways you can collect them and things, and how to get involved. What about as a publisher of a world-renowned historical wargaming magazine, such as you are, you guys must, and I know you guys cover in your magazine things beyond miniature games. So, are there good board games? I mean, there must be some great board games, but are there some really current ones right now, or some hot ones that are sort of a great way to get that historical wargaming fix, but maybe in a smaller, more affordable form factor? You could try it with your friends and see if they get into a particular era, and then maybe try to lure them into miniatures that way.
I'm sure. The Command and Colors series, I think, is a well-known example. Mm-hmm. Is a really clever board war game that's actually people convert it sometimes into a miniatures war game. Mm-hmm. We got CC Ancients ourselves. I think it's a lot like oh, come on. It's me now.
Which one? Like Battlelore?
There's a Songs of Ice and Fire. I think you guys reviewed it.
Yes, it's like the Battlelore system. Battlelore was the fantasy version, and then they did the Battlelore Battles of Westeros, which was the Ice and Fire
version. It's very similar to that, except it's just a block game.
Right.
But it would be very easy to convert to a miniature war game, although you're probably looking at quite a big game.
Right.
But I think it's an excellent idea to get yourself into the era, because I think that's if you don't know anything about history. I've studied history myself, as at university, and professionally too. The fun part about history for me is that the more you know about it, the more interesting it gets, because you know more. You relate more to people, to eras, so you need that one initial step to get yourself hooked, and a good game and a board game could be it.
Great, very cool. And so you'd recommend Command and Colors? Any other board games, historical board games you might recommend people take a look at?
Well, if you're into World War II, it's based on I think it's still the same system. Memoir 44.
Oh, yes.
Very popular.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I'm curious about, okay, so I want to ask you this question because there's a raging debate about Memoir 44. Because some folks will say that Memoir 44 is not even a war game, never mind historical or not. But do you feel like that's one of the things I'd be like, I'm going to break up Memoir 44 with a historical war game, or should I be worried he's going to laugh at me because I'm using Memoir 44? Or would you be like, hey, World War II, my favorite era, let's play?
I have to admit, I've never played Memoir 44, but it's so popular with miniature wargamers as well.
Yeah.
I think the system that I think it's the same way in Memoir 44 that the cards restrict you in what you can do.
Right.
Is a very clever way of simulating what one of our columnists, Rich Clark from the Two Fat Lardies, calls friction. You want to do something as a general, but your orders don't get there. Your troops refuse to move. So, but it's people would probably still say, yeah, it's too much of a game, but it's an interesting challenge, and it gives you a flavor of an era.
Right.
But historical wargamers will happily argue, and in fact, some probably like that better. Happily argue till they're blue in the face, probably with lots of beer, about what is the best historical war game, or which historical tactics should be simulated exactly in which way. But a lot of them just like to play the game.
Oh, that, and you're mentioning I'm glad you mentioned battlefield friction. Are there certain, not mechanics is the wrong thing I'm looking for, but are there certain things that, because I think you sort of hinted at it, are there certain things that need to be simulated in historical war games? And if they're not, like, I don't know, morale or command and control or battlefield friction or whatever, if they're not, do historical gamers just say by ignoring that aspect of combat, you're just too, you're not realistic enough, or you're missing a main element? Do you feel like that? Are there rule sets where you just look at them and say, it's missing this one element that needs to be there, or it doesn't feel historical to me?
Well, friction is the big overall catch-all for all those other ones, because you could say that morale. If the morale of your unit is not good enough, they're not going to do what you want them to do. I think to catch the spirit of an era, your units ought to work in a way that feels like they would in reality. The game has to reward you if you do that, and hopefully punish you if you don't. But that'll also depend on your opponent, of course.
So the rule set should make it so that it's advantageous to behave and do combat tactics that would have been done at that time, basically. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, otherwise, it's probably no point in actually having a historical war game. If you got your nicely painted up and maybe well researched 16th century Spanish tercio running about the board as if it was a race car, it
right,
just makes sense.
Got it. So, and that's where that little bit of accuracy comes back in. You got to feel like it's got to work sort of like the history books would have described it, at least basically, right?
Yeah, though what it's going to be is it's got to work like that particular historical wargamer thinks.
Right.
Should have been like, because the further back you go, the more debated everything gets.
Right.
And it's a very common complaint about this rule set is too clearly, this rules designer has this idea that German tigers are completely infallible on the battlefield. But if you look at
right,
they couldn't. That's a constant debate, but that's okay.
Is the strength of the tiger, is that like an actual like serious debate, or I guess what I'm trying to say and can't speak my native tongue, is there a debate, like sort of an iconic debate that you could point to as an example of things where people are just constantly fighting over what the source material is saying? sort of like you say, the farther back you go, like, is it, well, this guy didn't really have this kind of troops, or is there something that happens a lot in your experience, something specific?
Oh, wow. I wouldn't know of a specific iconic debate off the top of my head in the middle of the night.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good point. I'm asking a bit much for 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah. Although I would, from my experience, for instance, in ancient warfare, people can debate how the Greek hoplite phalanx exactly worked forever, and there's never going to be a resolution,
Right?
Because it just aren't there. It's just some people say on my reading of these sources it's like this, and the others say no, it's like that. But the sources are just too limited to say it's one way or the other, or it's the third way, and that in the end influences how people think they should operate on the war games table.
Interesting.
Have you ever had? Is there in your memory? Is there a big fight that you've ever been involved in that kind of like underscores that? Something that you remember fondly or less so?
I don't know. I when I was really much more into Warhammer Ancient Battles, that when they went from version 1 or 1.5 to 2, everybody started to go, well, the infantry is really have to be careful for their flanks now, and the phalanxes have become entirely now. That's one. That's a debate. Because I played Greeks in WoB 2, Greek phalanxes can barely move at all. They can only go forward, official steamroller type, and of course then the historian comes up and says, but in this battle, they did go. They turned 90 degrees very quickly and rolled up the enemy flank. But the game doesn't simulate this. This is too much a tournament game. It's not historical enough. Yeah, sure.
That sounds like any debate for any miniature war game ever. At that point.
It's really, there's to a point. It's kind of it's very fabricated to have this difference between fantasy and sci-fi on the one hand and historical wargaming on the other. Maybe it's the biggest difference is that in fantasy and sci-fi, it is much more tied into one system that rules them all. While in historical wargaming, there's much more of it's a cornucopia of choice.
That's right. It's open system.
Oh, very good.
Go. A plethora.
Copyright that.
Right. Good. Well, Jasper, that's a great ending note. Thank you so much for giving us some insight into the wonderful world of historical wargaming there.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time, especially at this time of night.
Indeed.
I know. I'm looking forward to bed.
Are you looking for news, reviews, and interviews? The D6 generation. It's groovy as groovy does define, baby. The D6 generation. Born to game. Oh, yeah.
Hey, and now I really want to talk about ArmorCast because I've been building this, continuing my dust table, and gussying it up a bit for Dystopian Legions. And I got to tell you, I keep getting people calling me not calling me, nobody calls me, but emailing
me.
Craig,
call line one, Craig. Call line one, Craig.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Click. Yeah. Look, I can't talk about it right now. Anyway, all of the awesome ruined brick buildings that I have. And of course, I've been telling you that they're revamping all of their molds so they don't have that. Well, Ginfritter, the guy in charge, the big kahuna over at ArmorCast, dug through all of his old stuff and found a bunch of these kits, the ruined brick corner kits and the ruined brick buildings that I have. So you can go to my blog, check out the pictures on my Dust Battle Report. A lot of pictures, a lot of really close-ups on those brick buildings. They are awesome. They are easy to paint. They are easy to put together, and they just look really, really cool. Up to 4-story ruins. And he's got a few left. Now, he's doing a special deal for D6G listeners only. If you go in and order anything, not just the bricks, but if you go in and order anything, you let him know that you're coming from the D6 generation, and he's going to throw in some of these little brick ruins on top of whatever you buy.
Nice.
And the more you buy, the more of these brick ruins he's going to throw in.
Awesome. Wow, what a bargain. So how do you let him know it's D6G?
I think there's a comment section when you do your order.
Just say D6G in there or something.
And you just want to mention that and you should do that, of course, for all of our sponsors, because that lets us know, or lets them know that their money is well spent and that you're really appreciating their product.
Help us help you by helping them.
Exactly. Now, on top of that, they have a brand new line of stuff that's coming out that I just got, and someday soon one of you is gonna get. Some really cool stuff. He calls it it's the scale independent bits. They're basically little resin model pieces. If you are building 28 millimeter terrain, it's really cool little details like the fans and vents and things like that. Little cooling towers and stuff. If you're doing 10 millimeter, they're awesome buildings and industrial complexes, and they're very carefully crafted. So they don't have any doors or anything that would indicate size. So they literally can fit any scale of sci-fi model that you're doing. They just really
so clever.
Cool. It is extremely clever. And they're perfect. He also at ArmorCast has these roof details that I got a bunch of at Gen Con because I'm doing up all of these non-ruined buildings. These new things would look cool for that too. Coolant towers and all kinds of stuff. So, and of course, we don't want you to forget what's the contest they're doing, Russ?
Head on over to facebook.com/ArmorCast Cinematic Effects second annual contest. Whew, it's a long one. You can win all kinds of cool cinematic effects. Basically, what you're going to do there is you're going to show your favorite usage of the cinematic effect, and you can win all kinds of cool prizes. So head on over there to check all that out over there on the Facebook page.
Absolutely. ArmorCast, some of the coolest terrain you're ever going to find for your gaming table.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, total fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can find me on Twitter at Nicole Wakeland and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. This week's shout out, Ruse, Victorian Steampunk Murder Mystery, powered by Game Salute. Check out the reviews and pledge at Kickstarter.com. So this weekend we went to see a movie that I think Russ and I were looking forward to more than the kids were actually looking forward to. We went to see Wreck-It Ralph. Now, they were excited. It's not like we were dragging them kicking and screaming to the movie theater. But when I saw the previews and saw all those old school arcade games, I couldn't wait to see these characters sort of come back to life on the big screen. I mean, I haven't played Pac-Man in I don't know how many years, and to see the ghosty Pac-Man at the meeting, the little sort of like Alcoholics Anonymous version of meetings for Bad Guys Anonymous was really, really fun. I couldn't wait to see it. So we took the kids and we sat down to watch this. And from the minute we sat down in the theater, this was one of the most fantastic kids movies that was also for adults that I've ever seen. There were even ads running before the movie actually started. As you're sitting there waiting for it to start, they had old school looking ads for the arcade where this game was actually housed in the course of the movie, where you get 2 free quarters on your birthday. And it was just hilarious. It really brought me back in time a little bit. But as for the movie itself, it was really fun. I'd sort of thought at the end, and it was funny because Russ said the same thing. It was a little bit like Toy Story for video games, that when the arcade closes and the lights go out and the music gets turned off, the games sort of come to life. And they don't just come to life in their one little arcade cabinet, but, game A can interact with game B and game C. And, it was just so well done. The characters are funny. The characters that are 8-bit versions of characters that are now in the current year, 2012, they still move like 8-bit video game characters throughout the course of the movie, right along with characters from modern video games that move the way modern game characters do, where they're much more fully realized and, their skin is realistic and their lips actually match the words coming out of their mouth. Little 8-bit characters in the Wreck-It Ralph game, they hop instead of really walking. They don't, it's like little pieces are missing, just like you would have seen so that they don't fully smoothly move. They sort of jerkily move across the screen. I loved this movie, and I love the references. I loved seeing my old video games. There's a scene in the beginning where it pans back through the arcade, and you see all the old vintage arcade cabinets. I wish that clip was somewhere so I could just watch it again and try to catch the names of all the games, because that was when I played video games. That was what got me started gaming, were all those things at Fun Spot, which was my favorite arcade when I was a kid, and it was fun to see those again. It's also just got some great humor. You don't have to be just a little kid to enjoy it. You can absolutely be an adult and enjoy this movie. The Sugar Rush, the other game that appears where you see it sort of looks like a Candyland in the previews, that world was so crazy and so fun. I wish they would make a Sugar Rush, just Sugar Rush video game so that we could play that, because my little girls want to play that so bad. I'm 90% sure there's a Wreck-It Ralph game, but there's not a Sugar Rush game. There needs to be one. If there isn't one, they are so missing the boat on that, because other kids were saying the same thing. I want to play Sugar Rush. It's just a racing game, but all the cars are made out of candy and it races through Candyland. It was fun. I'm not going to say spoilers because I know depending on where you live, you may not have this yet, or you may just not have seen it because it only came out this weekend. And I'm going to tell you about one favorite scene without spoiling anything. But there is a scene with Oreos, you know, the Oreo cookies, everybody's favorite cookie, that lasts for maybe, 20 seconds. It was so funny. I laughed so hard at that scene, and it wasn't just me. Russ laughed. Every adult in the theater laughed. Our kids only didn't laugh because they hadn't seen the movie necessary to understand the joke that happens in the Oreo scene. But it was so funny. The entire theater, every adult there burst out laughing out loud. I have no idea what the next lines delivered in the movie were after that scene because we were all laughing too hard. So if you're thinking of going to see Wreck-It Ralph, go, especially if you are an old school gamer who played arcade games for a quarter in the video game arcade. You are going to love this, and so are your kids.
That sounds like Vic the Viking.
It's Vic the Viking! That means it's time to talk about the War Store, bringing the war to your door since 1999. That's a decade and more.
It is.
Of course, the War Store just had the big War Store weekend.
They did.
Which was October 26th through the 28th, which was a big, huge success. And, of course, they came home from that, and bam, there was a giant hurricane.
Yep.
So right now it's kind of hard to get stuff from the War Store. They're trying to ship everything out. They've haven't had any major disasters that I've heard about. And I've talked to the guys over there briefly. Some of the amazing stuff we're looking at right now, of course, all the dystopian Legions 28mm stuff's there. You look at the pre-orders. You've got basically everything that's coming out miniature game-wise. You've got Mantic pre-orders. You've got Infinity, Russ's great new love. Privateer Press, Russ's old great love. Spartan, all their different Spartan games pre-orders. Weird miniatures. Basically, they've got everything mainstream for you, and a lot of stuff that's right off the beaten path. Indeed. Let's say you're, getting into pre-heresy 40K, right. And let's say you don't want to break the bank on, Forge World stuff. Yeah. You look on their bits. You go to, it's a little hard to find. You got to go to the Games Workshop tab on the left. And then you got to go to Games Workshop Bits. But follow me on this. And then under Games Workshop Bits, you go to, let's see, where am I looking at? Games Workshop Bits. I click on that. 40K bits. And then you go to, interestingly enough, other companies' interesting bits. Okay. Then you open up a big giant world of awesome coolness that you've never seen before. Oh, yeah. Companies like Max Mini and Cybor and Secret Weapon. All kinds of cool stuff. You can build an entire pre-heresy Space Marine army out of this little section of the War Store website and the plastic bits from the 40K stuff that you can get on the other part of the bits stuff. It's amazing, awesome looking stuff that's buried here. I would say nobody knows about it, except every time I try to buy some of this stuff, it's already sold out. So somebody knows about it because they keep beating me to it. Just one example of the amazing, awesome stuff that the War Store does for you. Great service, best service on the net, great pricing, an amazing, amazing selection. Really, if you do not have a friendly professional game store near you, or your friendly professional game store cannot get something, it is a pretty good bet that the War Store can get it for you.
Indeed.
This is the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com.
I'm Dan, your friendly professional game guide. Welcome back to When You Wish Upon a Game, where we discuss ways we can make the game industry better. Today's topic comes from listener John Christensen. I was curious why gaming companies can't seem to get their heads around merchandising. Personally, I spend the majority of my time in Games Workshop's universes, and purchasing things like shirts, keychains, and coffee mugs is all but impossible. Privateer Press seems a little better about this, as they sell patches and shirts on their site. I realize that I would rather a game company spends its time developing and supporting the games we love, but it shouldn't be hard to hire a company to bang out a few shirts every now and then. Thanks for writing in, John. Merchandising. Why don't companies that make our favorite games make cooler stuff to go with the games? There surely should be hundreds, if not thousands, if not tens of thousands of gamers out there that want awesome accessories that tie into their favorite pastime. Why doesn't every company have custom dice, a variety of t-shirts, hoodies, custom carrying cases, coffee mugs, and more? Surely the D6 generation could expand their empire by having a wider variety of bling for your ka-ching. Imagine you could have Nice Nicole knickknacks, Radical Russ rulers, and Grumpy Gallant gumballs. As John points out, companies are doing it already, so why not do more? Why not more options, more selection, more sizes, more cool stuff? Even independent publishing houses are getting in on the action. Most Kickstarter campaigns feature some kind of swag. Think back to the D-Day Dice giant bundle of stuff that you got for some ridiculously small amount of money. You can get custom carrying bags, custom dice, custom cards, exclusive widgets, and whoosy whatsits of every shape and size. As a current example, if you go on Kickstarter now and search for Tom Vassel's Mafia-themed game, Nothing Personal, you can add onto your pledge and get a classic gangster hat, or buttons featuring the characters, including some game designers. And one of the stretch goals is a gold signet ring for all the backers. The real answer is that while each of these individual efforts is relatively straightforward, they each take time and effort and care. And as John points out, we'd rather that they take the time making great games. Most game companies are already stretched for time and attention, so adding another merchandising project onto somebody's plate is just something that's going to distract them. This is why even very large companies like Wizards of the Coast license out their brands and allow other specialty companies to make that swag. You can get custom Magic the Gathering sneakers, D&D backpacks, and a million other little promotional items. And there's also the matter of aggregate demand. Sure, maybe you and maybe your friends and maybe another 100 people or so might be interested in custom t-shirts with a particular game character or logo on it. You might want a custom wooden storage case for your favorite card game. You might want a custom playmat or custom sleeves. But if there are only a few hundred people interested in a given set of accessories, it wouldn't be worth producing once you figure in the overhead cost of the staff that the company would need to commit, to coordinate the effort, add in the cost of production and the overstocked, wasted promo items after the fact, and it comes off as a lose-lose scenario for most companies. Come to think of it, this sort of problem could easily be solved by crowdfunding, even for established companies, since it's outside their normal bailiwick of making games. So start making your wish list of awesome game-related swag that you'd like to see and send it my way. I'll even throw in a little incentive this time around. Surely you've seen the Game Salute Meeple Wings, our logo in awesome metal pin form as seen emblazoned on the shirts of the likes of Will Wheaton. Email your merch wish list to wish@gamesalute.com, and I'll select folks to get a free pair of Meeple Wings, just for sharing your thoughts. That's what I see when I wish upon a game. How about you? Email me at wish@gamesalute.com. Thanks for listening and have fun playing.
Hey, and as I started mentioning earlier in the show, I think what I would really like to mention today about Game Salute and our partners at Game Salute is how they really, really ramped things up for Extra Life this year.
They really did.
They really did. Last year, or actually for the last few years, Extra Life was always a video game event, and there were some of us that were playing other games, and we were kind of like doing our own thing. Well, this year, through Dan and Game Salute, he was actually a partner with Extra Life, so that Extra Life, if you looked at any of the literature or anything, it was talking about not just video games now, but board games and miniature games and card games, and really expanding the whole event into a gaming universe event. It was really, really cool. And to sort of kickstart this whole thing, Dan actually, or Game Salute actually donated 1,000 Extra Life dice, where the 6 is actually the Extra Life logo, the little video game controller with the wings on it. And 2 of those went to each of the top 500 fundraisers in the world.
That's awesome.
So really, really getting the word out there and really like introducing the concept that it's not just video gamers now. And it really, really happened overnight. Last year, not a word of it. This year, right in the thick of it. And that's because that's Game Salute. That's Dan. He's in the middle of this whole industry now. He's got his fingers in every pie. He's doing Ruse. He's doing that story thing that was that we just finished
Story
with.
Realms.
Story Realms.
Yes.
It was on my bullet points a moment ago and then disappeared before I could even say it.
Yep.
And keep in mind, if you want to find one of your local stores, you can use the find out if it's your local store is a select store. They've got all kinds of extra stuff that they can get through Game Salute. You can find them on GameStoreLocator.com. Just really, really, really at the center of gaming today. Game Salute.
GameSalute.com.
Looking for not too horrible insight and entertainment beyond the usual paltry 4-hour D6G shows? Well, there's only one place on the planet you can find it, and it's in the Lost Chapters. Go to the D6Generation.com and begin your quest. Damn, farming games. Why did it have to be farming games?
Hey, welcome back. And so, of course, Russ just got back from Hawaii, and
Aloha.
Jasper. What?
Aloha.
Aloha. Yeah. Oh, you have no idea. We've been mahaloed to death since Russ got back.
Mahalo.
Yeah, exactly. So Russ will come back from Hawaii. Oh, you missed your cue. Jasper, of course, from right in the middle of historic Europe. And I've been a bunch of places myself. And as I said earlier in the show, I've always thought this would be a cool segment. And then I totally forgot about it. And then Russ came back and went, hey, I got a great idea. Damn him. And so what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the places that we've been around the world that have inspired us gaming-wise, whether it's historical gaming or what have you, and just the kind of places that you might want to think about. And you know what? You know who goes to many of these places?
Who's that?
Geek Nation Tours. But anyway.
Wow.
So Russ, why don't you start us off with your trip to Hawaii?
Well, there's quite a few places there. It's kind of funny because you go to Hawaii, you think paradise. You know, what are you going to do? But actually, there's a couple really, really cool inspirational spots. One I knew about, of course, and one was a surprise. But I'll get to that later. So first of all, the most obvious military place that's interesting historically is Pearl Harbor, right? And what was interesting about Pearl Harbor was, you know, everybody knows about the Arizona Memorial, which is the battleship that was sunk with most of the hands-on that killed there, and it was sunk right as a really very, very moving memorial there. That first of all, it's just really amazing, and the most interesting thing about it really was the not only the loss of life, but they had a great movie going into it where they show you this 20-minute film about sort of the reasons why it happened for those who are younger or maybe not be familiar with the story of why Pearl Harbor happened. And it was really interesting, and it's really good historical backdrop, very quickly but very well done to the whole scene. And what's great about that is if you're into historical gaming, especially the World War II era, it's just a great way to get a good feel for that, what the time was like, the political climate. Because it didn't just talk about, hey, there's an attack on Pearl Harbor. It really talks about the political climate around the events leading up to that time. And where the U.S. was and where Japan was and why Japan was worried about the U.S., why they cared about that. It was really, really interesting. Also, what was really interesting about the that whole scene there was just the power of the dedication and commitment of the soldiers to their cause. I'll talk about this a little bit in the Mighty Mo too, but in a second. But the Arizona Memorial, for example, I didn't know this at all, but they actually have a special. There's a huge wall there with all the names of the people who died the day the Arizona was sunk. But then also there's a little smaller section there with the names of people who passed away who were survivors of the Arizona, but have elected to be buried there with the rest of their fellow crew members after they've died later. So some of them have been buried there as recently as last year. So when someone passes away who was part of the Arizona crew, they can be cremated and then buried there. And just kind of give it's really, first of all, it's very moving, obviously, but second of all, it's really interesting to see the dedication that folks have to their country and to their causes, but not only that, but to their fellow crew members or fellow soldiers when they're involved in conflict. So it's really, if you play historical games to get a better appreciation for what it must have been like, I can't really think of a better way than a memorial like this to really get a good feel for sort of the consequences, but also the whole environment, what it feels like to be involved in a battle like that. It was really, really, really very moving. And the other part of that that dovetails into that memorial, but in a little less sort of a heart-pulling way, is right next to the Arizona Memorial now for the past, I think, since 2003 or so, is the USS Missouri, also known as the Mighty Mo. And the Missouri was just featured recently in the film Battleship. I actually enjoyed the movie Battleship. It was kind of fun. It was a silly romp, Battleship versus aliens. But in that film, a little bit of a spoiler alert, the Missouri is brought back into service. Now, what's cool about the Missouri is it's a full-size battleship. It was finished after Pearl Harbor. But on the Missouri, another historical cool thing about the Missouri is it's where the Japanese surrendered to the United States in the end of World War II. So they basically pulled the Missouri up off the coast of Japan, and MacArthur was on the boat, and the Japanese had to come on, and they talk all about the way the boat was facing and how it was symbolic, and the everything about the scene was really cool. And they've got a big plaque on the floor there, the boat, of where they stood to sign it. They've got copies of all the documents that were signed. But I think the most impressive thing, as a gamer, about the boat was to see the size. I should say ship, right? It's not a boat. The size of the guns. Like each of the turrets on the battleship weighs as much as the space shuttle. And to get a feeling of scale, I mean, everybody's seen pictures of battleships, and you see photos of little guys standing on them, and you get an idea. It's huge, but when you play a game, even a non-historical game like Dystopian Wars, where you're thinking about, I've got a massive battleship, but to stand there under those guns and to look up at it, you really can't appreciate the sheer scale. And what was cool about it was to go to it first and see it, and then go to the Arizona Memorial and realize a ship this size that holds that many men just was gone in like seconds. Was also kind of an interesting thing to see how the whole, the horrors of war, but also the interesting thing about how it operates. So it's really, I can't recommend it highly enough. I mean, I know everybody kind of goes to Hawaii, you don't have to go to Pearl Harbor, but it was really, really definitely one of the highlights of my trip there. And it was, I can't imagine really a more inspiring thing there. But then also what I did know about Pearl Harbor, I mean, everybody knows about the Missouri and you know about the Arizona. But the other couple things that are really cool there, and I didn't really have time to see all this because I'm there with two young kids, and they think the battleship was cool, and they understood the memorial, but they didn't want to walk through. There's also the Bowfins there, which is the submarine, and there's a whole dedication to the silent service there of World War II. And there's a huge museum there, all the submarine stuff. There's another whole aircraft museum there. There is tons of great military history there from World War II. So if you've got some time and you happen to be in Honolulu or in Oahu for any reason. And Pearl is like literally 20 minutes from Honolulu. So if you're actually ever laid over in the airport for a reason there, you can bop out and see it in half a day. It is a great, great experience. Really, really well done, and a fantastic way to get a good feeling for a lot of especially the naval stuff that happened in World War II. Really cool. So that's my Pearl Harbor. I would recommend that one to check that out.
Cool. I want to go there.
Yeah, it's awesome. I was definitely highly recommend it. What about you, Jasper? What would you, I know you're over there in the middle of Europe. What's some of your favorite places? What would be the number one? Someone came over and said, I'm a gamer. I want some historical inspiration. What would you ask them? Where would you direct them first? Would you want to know more about what they want to see?
I would probably have to ask, is there any specific period you're interested in? I mean, if you want to see World War II stuff, for instance, you can literally go, and from where I am, within a day drive, you can be in Normandy, you can be in Berlin, you can be well on your way to southern France, which is, well, there's plenty to see there too, but, I'm right close to Arnhem, Battle of Arnhem battlefields. Ardennes is just 5 hours drive away, and all of those are, if that's your specific interest, they're all very interesting, and the better museums will provide you with lots of context, exactly like as you explained for Pearl Harbor, and the memorials. I mean, I think you guys discussed this before, and the sort of the problem you can have with gaming World War II. I mean, I would say that if you'd come here to get inspiration for that kind of gaming, you probably also want to go to some of the military cemeteries here, and get an idea of what the numbers you see in battle reports actually mean. The Commonwealth war graves cemeteries, the Brits, I don't know if you know, but it's their policy to bury soldiers close to where they actually died, while Americans are usually brought home.
Right.
So if you go to Arnhem, you go to the Arnhem British Cemetery, you can actually, that's actually there about 1,500 graves for that one battle, and that's actually a small cemetery,
right.
But still big enough. If you go to the south of this country, Margraten is one of the biggest U.S. cemeteries in World War II in Europe, and it's enormous. I mean, it's not very inspiring, I suppose. It's not really a good word, but it's very, very impressive. More interesting, or interesting in a different way, I suppose you should say, is what I thought was pretty cool is that about 20, it's very, very unusual that they find an actual battlefield from like the ancient world. And the site of where the Battle of Teutoburg Forest was, this was in 9 AD, when 3 Roman legions were just completely were ambushed by Germanic warriors and destroyed.
Yeah.
It's like the most famous defeat, almost after the Battle of Cannae, the most famous Roman defeat. And they've been looking for where that actually happened for like 300 or 400 years. And about 20 years ago, a retired English major, he was able to locate a very likely site. They're still debating it. But you can go there, and there's a small museum there, but the geography is still more or less the same, and it's in a rural area, so it's not, it's the problem with Europe. Everything's been built up and torn down and built up and torn down for 2,000 years, so there's not much to see anymore. But over there, it's still pretty much the same. With it's a location where there's a hill on one side that would have been sort of wooded, but not very much, and a swamp on another, and a very narrow area where you can actually where there's a usable path, and you can just sort of imagine these Roman legions just coming down the path, trying to get home for their winter camps, and being attacked from up on the hill, and from the front, and probably from behind, and on a swamp on the right side, and
wow.
Can't go anywhere. And that, they do a pretty good job of explaining what that would have been like. And it's very rare to actually be able to stand in such a place and try and picture what it's like to go that far back.
Yeah, and I think if folks have never visited a battlefield before, I think there's a lot to be gained from just seeing the location. I mean, I think Craig mentioned earlier in the show the importance of, or in Rapid Fire, Geekly brought up in Rapid Fire about the idea that choosing your battlefield. And I think it's really cool to see even a really, really ancient battle like that, right? To see the exact situation that both sides were in based on the land, and to actually look at the land. I remember even something like Pearl Harbor, to look at the narrowness of the bay in, and to realize, okay, all these massive boats are trapped here, and what do you do, right? And all these planes are flying at you, and so I can imagine the same idea with or if you've been to Gettysburg or anywhere else, so you can see the exact situation and the exact way the lines were forming. I think it's really fascinating to kind of. I think that's what makes we talked about this before too a little bit. Historical gaming is so much fun. It's like, okay, if you were in that tactical situation, what would you do, right? How would you get out of that, or could you get out of that situation, right? Like the one you just gave us, right, Jasper?
Yeah,
right.
You put yourself in that position. It can give you ideas for scenarios, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
How you could do things, or just inspire you to get onto a new period.
Right.
Remember the first time they in the old museum, it's completely remodeled now. They also had a Roman Legion, I think, made out of Playmobil soldiers.
Yeah, cool.
Actual numbers.
Just for numbers, that's cool.
A long line of little guys.
That's great. So which
That's
location?
awesome.
Which location was that again, Jasper? You were just describing to make sure our listeners can remember it.
That's the Teutoburg Forest.
Teutoburg Forest.
They think it's in a place called Kalkriese near Osnabrück in Germany.
Okay, cool.
But not everybody agrees with that interpretation. There's definitely something
happened there, but yeah.
There. But whether it really was the Teutoburg Forest or not, it's not sure.
Great. So, Craig, what's one of your
Very
picks
cool.
for a place to get some inspiration?
Okay, well, I broke mine down in a little bit differently so I can cover more ground. I broke mine down into sci-fi stuff, ancient world stuff, and medieval stuff. So I want to start with the ancient world. That's just really quickly just go through 3 destinations. Egypt, Greece, and Rome, of course, has to be in there for me. First, Egypt. I don't know about nowadays. Things were a little calmer when I went a couple years ago. But if things calm down there, I highly recommend it. It was a beautiful, beautiful country. I talked about it a lot on the show after I got back. Mm-hmm. I think longtime listeners will remember that for me, by far the best part of the whole trip was a cruise down the Nile, which was amazing. So those cruises, generally, you board your little mini cruise ship in Luxor, which is awesome because there's a big, huge temple there and a lot of really, really cool ruins that are right out of Indiana Jones. Pops up a lot in your head when you're in Egypt, and just the scale of everything that was built by the ancient Egyptians is just amazing, and the preservational aspects of the Sahara Desert. It's just awesome. You get on your ship, and then a couple of different stops on the way down. The Valley of the Kings, of course, is amazing. Yeah. Very archaeological. As you go in, you're like climbing through these little holes in the rock to get into the tombs that are completely preserved. The temperature is brutal. You get to see all kinds of, just standing out there, you can look out and you can think in your head, you can see in your head all the different battles that took place over the course of North Africa in World War II. You in my head, especially if you've traveled extensively in Europe, you've seen Egyptian architecture everywhere because everybody went over in Egypt at one time or another and fought over it and took a bunch of stuff home. So there's pretty much amazing stuff in every major European museum from Egypt. And I mean, you go to Paris or some places in Germany, but for the most part, Paris or England, London in particular, you'll see literally just chunks of monuments taken from Egypt that they just kind of plunked down and made a monument in England and London and stuff like that. So it reminds you of all those different battles. The Temple of Horus at Edfu is this amazing kind of like hidden in the desert. You got to take we took horse carts out into the desert, and you round this little corner area. There's like a big shopping bazaar right out of a movie, and then you go through this little wall, and there's this enormous temple with these 2 huge jackal-headed statues sitting down. And just, again, the sheer scope and the scale of everything makes you feel exactly how, you see all this stuff in like Warhammer 40,000 novels and the rule books and the art and everything, these huge monuments. And really the only place I've ever been, I know there are some places that have bigger monuments or as big monuments, but this is the only place I've ever been where you just really literally feel dwarfed by the architecture. It's just very, very heavy and huge and massive, and it's just absolutely awesome. That's the Temple of Horus at Edfu. And then after Edfu, there's this place called the Esna Locks, which is you actually have to, I think you have to raise as you're going down the Nile. You have to actually, your boat has to be raised about 30 feet because of a series of dams. And it's just ridiculously cool to see the massive. I mean, it's very much. I'm sure the Panama Canal probably has the same kind of stuff. I mean, just these huge locks where you go, your ship goes into this little area and it closes off, and then these massive pumps lift you up, and these doors open. It's just really, really cool, kind of sci-fi looking, because you're thinking of like these just massive doors that are opening to release your ship. And then, of course, at the end, at the bottom, you've got the Aswan Dam. That is just an enormous, enormous dam, and reminded me of sci-fi, steampunky, dark future technology kind of stuff. So my trip down the Nile was just full of inspiration of all different types. In Greece, of course, you have to go to Athens. The Acropolis is amazing. Again, you got the scale, not nearly to the ancient Egyptians, but there's some huge, huge temples and stuff there. You've got the Temple of Zeus, which is almost completely ruined. But you've still got you've got several rows of the enormous columns that were inside. Right outside of Athens, you have the Temple of Poseidon at Sunion, which is this amazingly beautiful little peninsula with this huge ruined temple of Poseidon on it. That's just amazing. And then way, way, way to the north, you have Delphi, which is another awesome, very historically textured site. So Greece again. I mean, I came back from Greece and I made an entire what was I making? Inquisitor table. Yeah, and that I came back and I made an Inquisitor table that had a big, huge Greek temple on it and a big, huge archaeological dig.
I remember that
in the middle of it. Oh yeah, I loved it. So Greece was awesome for that. And then Rome. I'm gonna just go really quickly. The Forum is awesome. The Colosseum is awesome. Again, if you're looking for inspiration or a real world example of a big, giant, over the top, Baroque 40K like monument, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier / Victoria Emmanuel Monument / Altar della Patria in the middle of Rome is just this huge. They call it the wedding cake because it's trying to do so many different things. It's just this big, giant, huge building monument thing in the middle of downtown Rome, which is just awesome looking. And for ruins, Pompeii is amazing. And actually, if you're in Turkey, Ephesus in Turkey, which is right outside of Izmir, is actually, in my opinion, even cooler than Pompeii. It's better preserved in a lot of different areas. And a lot of the cooler, bigger municipal buildings are still there. 2- and 3-story buildings like the library has been restored that are just awesome, amazing. You're walking down these streets that, have you been there?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's awesome, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's just a little bit warmer than Pompeii.
Yeah, just a little bit.
In August anyway.
Oh, no, it's brutal. But there you can actually see it's very cool because they had a port in ancient times, and now it's not a port anymore. It's a plain. So that's kind of cool where you can literally see, all the flat ground used to be water. That's pretty cool. So that's
the location is gorgeous. I mean, it's I think you're right. You have more of a feeling of actually walking through a city because there's more stuff that's higher than 2.5 meters.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel or how I felt. Yep. So that's my my first little primer is the ancient world.
Nice.
Russ, share with us something new, Russ.
Okay. So so the next thing I wanted to talk about, after Pearl Harbor, which is, as I mentioned, right outside of Honolulu, there's a before I get there, one more thing I had to mention about the Battleship movie. So one thing I noticed in the Battleship movie, and I learned about this, actually visiting the Missouri, is one scene in the Battleship movie they show. Do you guys familiar with like on the Aegis class destroyers and modern destroyers? There's this little point defense gun.
Yeah,
and it looks like
the Aegis, isn't it called? Isn't that the Aegis?
Yeah, it's got a little Gatling gun on it, and it's got a white dome on top. You know what I'm talking about, Jasper?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a little gun, and basically the white dome is like a radar system, and so when an enemy missile comes in, it tracks it and shoots it down like Missile Command, right? These are real, right? Yeah. And they have so I'm watching the movie Battleship, and the Missouri's been called into action, and World War II era battleship, and the aliens are shooting these missiles in, and earlier they showed the Aegis class destroyers shooting them down with these little guns. Then they showed the Missouri, and the Missouri's got one of these little guns on it too, shooting them down. And I'm like, how the hell does a World War II class battleship have one of these little guns on it. Do you guys know why that is? I learned why that is when I was there. It's not actually.
No, I don't.
It's not an anachronism. It's actually correct. I did not know this. Jasper, did you know why it would be?
No.
Well, the Missouri was called back into action for the first Gulf War.
Oh, I did know that now that you mentioned it.
And I did not.
Yeah, that's what I said, upgrades.
Oh, you did? Yeah, upgrades. See, I didn't know. I thought it was decommissioned after World War II, but it wasn't. It was decommissioned, but then they recommissioned it, brought it back in, and totally upgraded. Took a bunch of the little tiny... So if you look at it now, there's a lot of the little side guns are gone, and they've been replaced with cruise missiles and these little turrets. Once I saw it, so it's just another note. If you visit that, you're not just seeing World War II, but you're actually seeing also a bit of the Gulf War and some of the actions that happened there, and some of the newer equipment and how they retrofit and keep reusing military equipment over and over again, which you see in a lot of these fantasy games too, right? Like variations on all these different ships and stuff. So it's really cool to see that as well. So I just wanted to mention that. I'd forgotten to mention that earlier. So after this, we decided to go on this hike. And my whole goal for this hike, I've been told that the Diamond Head, it's called Diamond Head, and Diamond Head is this huge crater, volcanic crater, right behind Honolulu. So if you've ever seen a picture of Honolulu on television, you'll see this sort of like wedge-shaped mountain right behind it. And it's called Diamond Head Crater, and it's actually a volcanic crater inside the giant crater, and you can hike up to the top of this crater. And I'd heard, it's awesome. It's got these great views of Honolulu and Waikiki, that whole area, and the beach, and I wanted to go check it out, and my family loves to hike, so we're going to do this. What I didn't know was that actually it was a site of a bunch of old World War I and World War II era defenses. In fact, when you go into the crater to drive inside, you go through a tunnel that takes you through the edge of the crater, and all I could think of going in was, this is an awesome site for my evil overlord lair. As we're going in, because as you go in, right, the hike isn't just like a hike up the side of a nature trail. It's like this, they have a picture of it. It's a switchback trail going back and forth, and the reason the switchback is so that defenders could shoot down on anybody coming up. And then it goes through all these tunnels. You actually go inside the wall of the volcano, and it's not like naturally carved out. It's like there's a old metal spiral staircase. There's like these little huge stairs going up, and then at the top, there's like these massive bunkers coming out of the side of the volcano overlooking the Pacific Ocean, west towards Japan, right? Because that's the other thing we learned at the movie, which I kind of knew this already, but it wasn't, everybody knew that Japan was probably, if they were going to attack the U.S., they were going to attack Hawaii, even before World War II. So some of these defenses are actually World War I era defenses. But it was just, we didn't expect when, and we didn't really understand aircraft carriers were so effective then. So it was kind of a surprise that way. But in terms of them coming, we had all these defenses. We had early radar. We had all these great things going on back then. We just kind of ignored it all, which is sort of the problem. But what's cool about this hike is you go up through all these cool things. You go through these things. You see this great, not only this great view, but these really, really cool bunker defenses. And it's very cool to think about. It was kind of like Craig. I was like, I want to go back and model this awesome scene with this volcano and these little bunkers sticking out and these little old gun ports and everything. It was really cool. And then you could see along the entire crater rim from the highest point, all these little overlooks overlooking the ocean. And it was just, you could just imagine the poor guys who had to come up here and were stationed up here in World War II and carrying all these supplies up and down this massive hike. But it was really, really cool to see all that, and really amazing. Again, just a great, cool thing. I'm sure it's very similar at Normandy and stuff, where you can see the old bunkers and things and see what's going on there. It's really, really interesting observation area. And you can definitely see why they picked that spot, because the commanding view, you could almost see the entire southeast side of the island, the entire approach that anything coming towards Hawaii from Japan must have to take, plus a great, spectacular view of the city as well. It was really, really cool hike. So that's my second choice, was the Diamond Head hike, which I had no idea it was going to have any kind of historical military reference at all, but it was really neat.
That's awesome.
So what about you, Jasper? What's another area you'd recommend there in your neck of the woods, so to speak?
From my neck of the woods, well, if you're a proper gamer, you should really go to Carcassonne, shouldn't you?
Oh, yes, you should. So is it all flat and modular? Does it plug into different areas?
I was going to say, is it all in big square modules?
And is the whole farming thing very complicated?
I have no idea, but it's a pretty cool medieval city.
Yeah.
Big fat walls around it. And I was there, must have been over 25 years ago, so I don't remember very much of it. But in general, I mean, if you like medieval stuff and castles, and especially France is good for that. There are so many cities that have at least partial walls and some complete walls, like Carcassonne. And so many castles that you go there and you just want to play medieval games and maybe have a tournament game, or figure out how to build siege engines for your castle and how to defend them, and it's just that's like awesome.
Cool.
Castles are great.
Castles are awesome. Yeah, I
Castles are cool.
Yeah. If you see a castle, just go visit it. That's pretty much the rule of castles, right?
That is very true. Very true indeed.
Yeah. It that could be that could make your trip a bit long, and especially in France because there's so many of them.
Right. Well, this is the other thing. So let me ask you this, Jasper, because this is one of the things when I was in Europe that got me always confused. Is that I always wanted to visit the sort of the military castles, but every once in a while there's like palaces basically defined as castles, which are cool, but it's not really the same thing, right? Like, so like.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, lots of those originally fighting castles were converted in the 17th century and 18th century into mansions and palaces and stuff.
Right.
But you just sort of have to know or get information about a castle first to see if it's really what you think of as a castle with lots of crenellations and a moat and a drawbridge.
I want arrow slits, I want exactly. I want a drawbridge,
Yeah.
Right. Right. So always make sure you get a picture first. If you're planning a trip and you think you're going to a castle, and you don't want to get suckered into a palace, make sure you get a nice picture first. That's my recommendation on that one.
Unless you're interested in interiors of that kind of castle because you're playing I don't know, something but court intrigue game, then going to a palace might be just a thing.
Right. And then you got ones that are on the edge, like Neuschwanstein, right, which is sort of really a palace, but kind of a cool-looking castle.
But it looks like a castle.
Right?
It looks like a castle, but you could also go just Disney World, and you're probably
seeing the same thing.
The exact same thing.
Which was the inspiration, exactly, for Disney
Easier
World.
to get to.
Well, it depends where you live, but yes, could be.
Yeah.
Well, I
for
mean,
Jasper. Although I guess, have you been to Euro Disney, Jasper? Is there any inspiration there? No.
I haven't been to Euro Disney, and I probably plan to keep it that way. There's
okay.
Enough other things.
Are you boycotting Euro Disney, Jasper?
Wow.
No. They're just. I have higher priorities for other things.
Fair enough.
Not unlike Russ is boycotting Revolution.
Right. Yes, I have higher priority for other things.
So much I'm boycotting. It's just that I don't enjoy it at all, and I don't want to go.
That's exactly. There you have it. Okay. So let's see. We're running a little long. So Craig, why don't we each do one more quick one here? So Craig, what do you got for?
Okay. I'm actually going to do all mine really quickly. Well, if you're going to go to one place, honestly, Russ said New Zealand is a great place to go, and that's absolutely very true, except unfortunately it's so huge and so spread out that you have to spend a long time to go to all the different areas to get a lot of the impact. So for my money, easier to get to, cheaper to get to, especially if you're going from America. The one-stop shopping for inspiration for me is Ireland. You've got some amazing castles, most of which are the combat sort of castles that Russ is talking about. Up north, you have this thing called the Burren, which is actually it is a lunar landscape that is crazy, just this blasted volcanic lunar landscape that is just amazing. Totally looks like you're on another planet. The Ring of Kerry down south is ridiculously beautiful. You have the Lakes region and Killarney, which is down south, sort of inside the Ring of Kerry. And then up north, you have the mountains. So you really have all these different types of terrain, including these castles and these huge fields where you can imagine these big battles taking place. Really great for inspiration of a bunch of different types. Russ already mentioned Schloss Neuschwanstein.
Yes.
And Jasper mentioned Germany. I had Germany on my list too. Italy, of course. The Renaissance. You've got Florence, which is amazing. You've got, if you want to look at another medieval city, Siena is an amazing walled medieval city that is just crazy, especially if you go there during the horse races where they actually have horse races. Each neighborhood has their own color and their own animal. And so they have these liveried horses that have this huge horse race around the center of town, which is a canted circle of cobblestone. So I had never seen it, but I can only imagine that it gets really, really rough.
NASCAR for horses.
Whatever neighborhood wins, the entire city gets decorated with their animal icon and their color for an entire year. All kinds of cool stuff. And one thing that I think everybody misses when they're traveling as far as inspiration goes is airports.
Oh, yeah.
Especially from the sci-fi perspective, the most inspirational stuff I see is some airport. Denver in the U.S., is a crazy. I mean, it's like a lit from underneath, abstract Rocky Mountains.
Okay, I can see it.
What's that?
I can see it. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, that's amazing. O'Hare has that neon tunnel inside it that goes from one terminal to
The girls
another.
like that one. Yeah,
That's cool. You've got JFK has the TWA terminal, which looks exactly like in my head what a high science fiction spaceport would look like, with all the arches, and it's all smooth and there's no straight lines. Beijing is a crazy, crazy beautiful airport. Shanghai also. Not Charles de Gaulle. In fact, I would say Charles de Gaulle is whatever the opposite of inspiration is. That's what Charles de Gaulle is. And Cairo, the Cairo International Airport, is awesome if you want inspiration along the lines of Indiana Jones or Casablanca.
Yes.
So I think quite often, if you open your eyes when you're stuck in an airport, you'll see all kinds of cool sci-fi futuristic inspirations that are pretty neat. So that wraps all my stuff up.
Well, don't throw it all away, because if we get good feedback on this segment, maybe we'll do another one. But speaking of Indiana Jones and other worlds, so you maybe remember this in Hawaii. We were in the lava tube, the volcanic national park there, which you're right, the volcano stuff looks totally like another planet. And I totally got photobombed by Indiana Jones. So I was in this picture of my girls, and Nicole's taking the picture, and we didn't see it. She took a picture of me and the kids, and then after we looked at it on her phone, there's a guy standing behind us. All he is in shadow, and he's got the hat, and something looks like a whip on his hip, and that's all we could tell. It was awesome. I'm like, Indiana Jones totally photobombed me in a lava tube. That's so cool. So clearly there was some kind of ancient relic nearby. I just didn't know what it was.
Awesome.
So the only thing I wanted to mention, because we are running a little long, and we'll save some of this for next time, if people like this, is you mentioned the New Zealand, and I thought of your New Zealand trip because I know you had done a lot with Maori back when you were working on Flames of War.
Oh, the War Museum in New Zealand was awesome.
Yeah, so I remember you talked about that, and that inspired me more to learn about the Maori after you did that with Flames of War. It's kind of reverse, like seeing it in Flames of War, I wanted to learn more about it. And what fascinated me a lot was one other thing I went to in Hawaii, and I didn't even know this existed, but we were trying to find, it's kind of interesting. You go to a place like Hawaii, you've never been there before. You're trying to balance doing the touristy stuff because you kind of feel like you should, like seeing Pearl Harbor and going to a luau, with I want to get off the beaten path and do things like the locals do,
Yeah.
So one of the things we had to kind of do, we had to do a Hawaiian luau in Hawaii. You kind of have to, right? It's like some kind of rule. So we're trying to figure out, and everybody kept saying, go to the Polynesian Culture Center. I didn't even know what this was. So it turns out the Polynesian Culture Center is this really interesting place. It's kind of like a theme park, but not really. It's kind of like a theme park meets Colonial Williamsburg, about Polynesian culture, not just Hawaiian culture, but all the islands in the Pacific. So New Zealand and Fiji and all those places, they have the different cultures. It's like different lands there that are set up to show you the cultures. And it's instead of like, doing little rides and stuff, you're actually like learning how to light a fire with wood and how they have really amazing dancers there that can do all the different dances. And they have folks there from New Zealand doing the Maori thing with the tongues and the dancing and all the crazy face tattoos. And it's kind of cool because, like, you go to a theme park and you get a tattoo on your arm of like a pony. Well, you get your like Maori tattoos on here. It's kind of cool. But it was really, really cool. It was a great way to get some of that, obviously Hawaii's a long flight for me, but New Zealand's even longer. So being able to see some of that stuff, and I've been to New Zealand before, I don't know how authentic it is, but it felt very authentic, especially compared next to the Hawaiian stuff where I could see other places too and realize these guys really were serious about getting it right. It was really, really interesting and really fascinating, and it was really cool to see, again, and I would put that in the same places like a Colonial Williamsburg and stuff where you can see not so much the field of battle, but what life was like at that era you're trying to reenact or live through in your game. So like if you're into the American Revolution and you want to see some of that, you could check out a place like Colonial Williamsburg or do the Freedom Trail in Boston and see sort of like what some of the buildings were like and maybe what the firearms were like and what the weapons actually looked like then. And this is the same with true of this place where you can actually see what the weapons were like, see what the clothes they were wearing were like. I know a lot of people have very high attention to detail when they're doing their models and stuff. And here you can see what the different Polynesian cultures wore to battle, what those grass skirts were for, why the men wore them too, and all that kind of interesting stuff. It was really, really fascinating. I thought it was neat to see. I didn't really realize you'd be able to see cultures beyond just Hawaii right there in that area. So it was really cool. So I definitely recommend that as well, the Culture Center, especially if you're interested in what the different islands in the Pacific were like during those time periods.
Cool.
Jasper, you got time to squeeze in one more?
Yeah, well, the one thing that I wanted to mention that's actually in America, if you're in Chicago and you're in the what's the Science Museum, I think,
Yep.
they have the U-505 there, and you can actually take tours in it. And if you've seen Dust Boat or that other U-boat movie, I mean, I never get an idea of how cramped and claustrophobic it is until you actually go into the thing, and it is tiny in there. It's the same thing that you said, Russ. You just have to go there and stand in place and to get a feel of it. I'm sure, I'm 6'3.5" or something, so I'm probably a lot taller than most German submariners in World War II. But even if you're like 5'5", it's still not a very big boat.
Yeah, that's a great example, actually. And you're right, submarine. It's really hard to get a feel for how cramped a sub is until you've been on one. Another couple great places. It's not a German one, but if you go to Groton, Connecticut, they have the Nautilus there, which is the first nuclear-powered submarine, and you can go on board that too. And that's a much more modern one, obviously, than the U-505 is. But it's still, even though it's more modern, you can still get a feeling for how small and cramped these things are and how little space there really is. Same is true in Pearl Harbor. There's also a submarine mentioned there as well. So there's lots of places you can go to. If you get a chance to go on these, I think they're really worth visiting.
Yeah, I think that goes in general for especially living history parks and stuff. If they're well done, if they're well built and well researched, you can go into something. I think you get a better idea than seeing a ruin or stuff that you can only see.
Right.
Old-fashioned museums where you just see, cases and cases of stuff, which is really cool. But then I find that I enjoy really seeing it more, actually experiencing it more, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks, Jasper. I think it's good examples of some great places to go for destination inspiration. Craig, you got any last ones you want to sneak in here, or should we call it?
No, I mean, I kind of rushed through my stuff. But yeah, I just, I would say you can see really cool, inspirational stuff almost anywhere except for Charles de Gaulle Airport. Just keep your eyes open and look around you. And especially if you're the kind of person who kind of sees your surroundings in that sort of frame of reference, which I think I am, and I think Russ is, and I think Jasper is. I think you can see really, really cool. Like when I was in California quite a few years ago, literally just driving up the coastal highway, I was inspired to make a table. This is a long time ago for Daka Daka. I made a table that I don't even think anybody knew was inspired by just the sort of the wind carved hills just inland of the coastal highway. So I mean, there's just all kinds of really cool stuff. And as Clausewitz said, terrain is very important for games. I mean, war, right. Both for inhibiting the movement of the enemy and for cover. The most important of which is
cover
somebody.
Or position.
Cover. Oh, they learned something.
See, I would say position counts as cover. I want to recount on that.
Yeah.
The question.
You think what? Position counts as cover?
Yeah, that's my answer because it was all about position. See?
Not necessarily, because position could also be the top of a hill.
Well, it just also gives you cover.
If you know where somebody is, then you can surprise them.
Right.
Okay, well, fortunately, there is no redos in Rapid Fire. So
that's a shame. Well,
I got nothing for you.
Well, thank you, Jasper, so much for joining us on this episode of the D6 Generation. We really, really appreciate it. And if folks want to know more about your good works there, where should they go?
www.wssmagazine.com.
A quality website about magazines if there ever was one. Indeed. Well, thanks again, Jasper, for joining us. I really appreciate it. And especially thank you for staying up so late. Because
Yes, absolutely. The latest staying up person we've had so far in the third chair.
Yeah, I guess even the dog came up to see what I was doing up so late.
Nice. Oh, see, even the dog's annoyed that you're not going to sleep. Well, you go to sleep, Jasper. You have earned it.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jasper. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
You're listening to the D6 Generation. Born to game.
Craig, we've been talking an awful lot in this episode about travel.
We have.
You know, where to go, see stuff. And that always makes me think of Geek Nation Tours.
It does. It does. Every moment of talking about travel makes me think of Geek Nation Tours.
You could listen to, you know, a quality program like this one to get great tips on where to go to get inspired for stuff. Or when you're going on a trip anyway to a place like, I don't know, Comic-Con or Gen Con or Adepticon or
the battlefields of the Civil War,
right.
or England. I mean, pretty much Germany for Essen.
You can rest assured. You can rest assured.
You can do that too.
The folks at GNT, Geek Nation Tours, Terrace and the lads there are going to make sure you not only get to where you're going and have a great time with fellow gamers like yourself, but also you're going to see those other places nearby. Like when you go to PAX, you get to go to the Aviation Museum right there and see all some of the stuff we were talking about this very episode. You get to check things out, not just real things, but also like the Vipers and the other things from Battlestar in there, all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's a great way to make sure you're going to see those really cool, inspirational things right near the major event you're attending.
Absolutely. And of course, remember that every one of these tours starts with an orientation dinner where they bring in local guys that know exactly what's going on and what to go see. So he makes sure that you're not going to miss a thing in any of these destinations, whether it's the Black Library tour where you meet all the authors, or the Emerald City Comic-Con that you were just talking about. I mean, just all kinds of different things. So it's not, if you go to a con, you're not just going to the con. You're going to museums, you're going to local sites, and really literally around the world.
You can't miss out. So what you want to do is head over to geeknationtours.com and click on the upcoming tours link to see all the hotness and get yourself booked and ready to rock and have a time of your gamer life.
Absolutely. Geek Nation Tours. This edition of Jever Notice is brought to you by Proto. For gaming brought the Dog Alliance together, and gaming keeps me and Lucy together. Let us play till the day we fall. Game on. Did you ever notice how much harder you work when your sense of competitiveness is put into play? How much we really try to win when we're fighting against somebody else? I have. And it's quite intriguing, and I've used it against myself, or I should say for myself, on several different occasions. And it's come up recently in the past couple of months and really sort of driven home this whole concept to me. And I would like to share it with you. It really didn't gel until we were talking to Eric Johns off the record, and he was just talking about he was going to a conference and they were going to present a paper, and we really, really wanted to talk to him about it on the show, and we are going to eventually have him on the show because he has some about this, because he has some really fascinating thoughts and insights, and this whole concept, like I said, was gelling in my head, not specifically for the focus that he was working towards, but for something else that I'll talk about in a minute. But really, he was talking about this gamification of effort, where people will try harder, or they'll go farther, or they'll bid more if you make it into a game. And you see this, and you've seen it for ages on eBay. I mean, how many of you have paid more than you really wanted to pay for something, because you get into that sense of competitiveness, and the next thing you know, you're bidding up. I almost did it today. I almost got one of those Ertl Rebel base models from the early 90s on eBay, and I almost paid for it about $10 more than I know I can get it in a buy it now auction somewhere else. And I was just like furiously crazy, like, oh, bid up. So that's what he's talking about. That's what Eric was talking about when he was talking about this whole concept that if you make a game out of something, you can push people to work harder or to go higher. And he was specifically talking about Kickstarter and the way to make a Kickstarter success game-wise is really to game it, to make it like a game. And the best example of that, of course, is the Reaper Mini Bones Kickstarter that was looking for, I don't know, I think $30,000 and ended up going almost $4 million, somewhere around there. I forget, but it was pretty high. And of course, the guys over at Reaper did an interview that week, actually right after it closed, with the guys from the Nerd Herders podcast. So go check that out if you're interested in what he had to say about the whole concept. Not this concept, but the concept of their Kickstarter and what they did. But what Eric was talking about is, look, they made it into a game. Oh, if we push it past this level, if we push it past the next level, we get this stuff, and it's just a silhouette. You don't know what you're getting, and so they really made it into a game. And I'm sure that's not the main reason it succeeded, and that's not Eric's point either. His point is just this, that it helps the gaming mentality. Like, you can really goad it further and further. When I'm talking about what I know that it helps me, last year, longtime listeners will remember that I did Karen's family's Biggest Loser competition, and I came in third, of course, which is the first one that doesn't get any money. So first real loser. And I was frustrated, and I mean, I lost a lot of weight to get there. And this year, I knew it was coming up, and I didn't plan ahead for it. I never know when they're going to start it, because they started at different times over the course of the year. But I had hurt my arm, so I hadn't been able to exercise all summer long, and I'd been kind of depressed, so I'd been eating a lot of more food. And so when it started, I was like, okay, this is it. I'm going to make this my change. I'm going to make this into a good thing, because I'm at the perfect point now, and I still can't really exercise a lot, but I could run, and I did a little running, and I ran in a Renegade Playground run, which is kind of like Spartan Race Light. But I really enjoyed it, and I actually went with my friend Dave and his wife and Karen, and we had a really good time. But for the most part, I couldn't really exercise, so I started doing this, and I got pneumonia the first week and lost a whole bunch of weight, and then ended up not only keeping it off, but I really, really regimented myself, because I'm one of those guys, one of those people, guys and girls, that really, I either have to go all out and I have to regiment everything I'm eating, or I'm done. So I did that. I ended up losing 13% of my body weight. It was, I really did well. I came in first place. It was awesome. I put the money away for something special, I'm hoping to put something together for Karen and the baby. And so that's where the money went. But it was all about the game. And I was able to do that because I would look at something I really wanted to eat and be like, no, I'm in the middle of a game. I can't do that. And so that gamification of the weight loss really helped. And if you think about it, that's what we do with our contests. We want to make these, and what we should do is jack it up a little bit. Because I really want to try to make it, a little help, make it even use this even more. And so that's what I'm talking about now with fundraising. I have tried to do this with fundraising. Last year I did it with fundraising with Extra Life, and I was going to give away the special prize to the person who bid the most. And that's what I wanted to do. And I got a bunch of really high bids trying to bid the most, but I didn't get a lot of really low bids. So this year I decided I was going to try to game it and give everybody a chance to win. You get for every $10, you get a chance for me to pull your name out of a hat. And, oh, by the way, Extra Life still accepts donations, I think, to probably the next couple of weeks. So, if you want a chance, throw your name in the hat, $10, good cause. And this year I didn't make as much because I didn't have folks jumping in there with nearly as big a bids, which was a little frustrating for me. But it was awesome for kids. I mean, Extra Life was a huge success this year, huge success, way bigger than last year. So it was awesome. So now I'm doing this new thing, the No Shave November, which I can tell you. Can you hear that? Audacity thinks you can hear that. So I bet you can. That's 4 days. I think I'm going to be okay. So I'm raising money for Wounded Warrior Project. Here in the U.S., it helps wounded soldiers coming back from combat to reintegrate themselves into society and really help them with the more advanced procedures and prosthetics and things like that that the government medical services can't really provide or doesn't really provide. And so it's always been very dear to my heart for a number of reasons that I don't generally talk about, but it's really important to me, and I thought that this would be great. And so I want to gamify this and make as much money for the Wounded Warrior Project as possible. So I've told all of my students, because it's supposed to be school-oriented, so they all know about my podcast, and they know about our listenership numbers. So I told them that I would mention every student who donated at least $1 on my podcast. So I'll be doing that at the end of November. And I'll do that for you guys, too. I'll mention you on the podcast. However, a picture of me really, A, is creepy for a student, and B, it's really not a lot of incentive because they see me every day. But I figured, like, a lot of you guys, like, we don't even know what you look like a lot of times. So I figured it might be neat. And so how about if I gamify this a little bit more, and I say if I make $100, which I'm already close to with just student donations, I will I'll get that picture, and it'll probably be like a photocopy because I don't have a lot of money, unless only a couple people do it. And remember, self-addressed stamped envelopes. You got to email me at Craig at the D6Generation, and I will give you my address, or you can PayPal it to me. I can do that, and I swear on my grandfather's grave, all of that money, every penny of that money, including any fees that PayPal might take out, I will reimburse into the amount that you sent. That'll all go to the Wounded Warrior Project. So, so a picture at 100. How about like a nice picture, like a glossy actual? At like 500. No, let's say 200. At 500, a costume. Okay, I will have a picture in costume, and the person who donated the most gets to dictate the costume. And at 1,000, I will wear that costume all day long at school. How's that? And pictures of me. You'll get a picture of me with the beard and everything, but also multiple pictures. I mean, like a little picture, little montage printed out of me over the course of the day in school wearing that costume. Okay, so that's if I make $1,000 for the Wounded Warrior Project with this. Let's see how good I am at gamifying things. So that's what I want to do. I want to try to motivate. I want to try to harness this thing that I have noticed and see how far that goes. I also have a little good news for those of you who got a little nervous during Achievements in Gaming, because I have discovered something. I fixed my soundboard. That's right. I have all of the special effects I want at my disposal. So never fear. In the next episode, you will definitely hear Achievements in Gaming. Yeah, because that part's not really my responsibility. Anyway, that's about all I have to say about that. Thanks for listening, and good night.
Achievement unlocked! You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@the d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Star Wars That I Used to Know by Israel Curtis. Download at iTunes if you want to get your own copy.
Now and then I think of when I was in power, like choking people with the force until they died. But Then you told them all my history and took away my masculinity and had my character portrayed by subpar actors. Addicted to an overuse of graphics and making Greedo shoot first, Han shot first. So when you try to have the Force make sense, you introduce the midi-chlorians. And what's the deal with having me be dubbed over? But you didn't have to change it all. Make them like they never happened and the fans are nothing. I don't even need your love. You treat me like a panther and I feel so rough. No, you didn't have to make them blow. Have your friends direct your movies and they'll turn out better. You think that you don't need them, no. What happened to the Star Wars that I used to know? What happened to the Star Wars that I used to know? What happened to the Star Wars that I used to Now and then I think of all the times I screwed fans over. I had them believing that the first 3 films were really done. But Star Wars will be done my way. I don't care what they have to say. I think that they should let it go, and they'll never get a Blu-ray of the Star Wars that you used to know. You didn't have to change it all. No more puppets, no more practical effects or nothing. I don't even need your love. You treat me like a whopper and I feel so cold. No, you didn't have to sell your soul. Do we really need to watch them all again in 3D? Jar Jar was an all-time low. What happened to the Star Wars that I used to know? Movies I used to know. What happened to the Star Wars that I used to know? Movies I used to know. What happened to the Star Wars that I used to know? I used to know. That I used to know. I used to know. That I used to know.
Hey guys, I'm Eddie. This is Tyler. Together we make up Teddy Films.
Padme, you promised me Padme.
Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe because we have some amazing stuff coming up, including a collaboration with IGN on our next video. A big thanks to our cast and crew, especially our very talented actors. We had Mike Loveland as George Lucas. We also had Tyson Apostle from Survivor. And speaking of collaborations, we collaborated on this video with Ollie Bird Art and Design. They're the ones that designed this painting. Huge thanks to Israel Curtis from SomaCat. He's the guy behind all the music you heard. He even sang the vocals on this. Check their website out. They do some incredible work. And we also worked with The Winters. They helped us with art and production on this. Check out their channel. They have an amazing 3D video for you guys to watch. Time to get excited. Dude, get excited.